Chapter 692. Chen Hao did not investigate in the interlayer of the barrier. He directly rushed out of the barrier and entered the sect ruins. Sure enough, as soon as he stepped out of the barrier, Chen Hao sensed the existence of Xiaoji through the magical law of the aircraft. Master! As Chen Hao's magic weapon, Xiaoji 1, who had a trace of intelligence, suddenly said excitedly in Chen Hao's mind. When did they arrive? Did the two masters receive them? Chen Hao asked. Yes. Master, the two masters were brought into the barrier by two genius disciples of East Flow City. One of them is called Pandong Flow, and he said that he is a friend of Master and Matriarch Chen Shui. Oh! Chen Hao was slightly puzzled. How did Pandong Flow and Pandong Xing know that Han Mei and Yun Wei are related to us? According to the information I monitored, it was because of Han Mei's aura and appearance that the Pandong Flow judged that she is related to Matriarch Chen Shui. When she first contacted the two masters, she asked Chen Xiaobai. At that time, the two masters were occupied by other cultivators, so she was helping the two masters. Chen Hao frowned slightly and immediately glanced at the dense cultivators around the barrier and the cultivators who could not get close. He immediately understood what was going on and secretly said, "This Pandong Flow's ability to recognize people is really amazing. Master, Huan Huan and Lei Lei have also arrived. They just entered the barrier not long ago. Huanle was ordered by me to pick up the other matriarchs." Xiaoji 1 continued. Good. In this way, we will not leave the sect ruins in a short time. You also go to pick them up, lest they waste time looking for them. Yes, Master. Boom. Immediately, Chen Hao punched the barrier and broke through the first layer of the barrier. His powerful perception spread out. Chen Hao found that there were more than 10,000 cultivators who broke through the first layer. However, Chen Hao easily locked onto two familiar auras. They hadn't seen each other for so many years. Even though he had Chen Shui first, Chen Hao was still a little excited. This was definitely the first person he would be able to enjoy the happiness of having two wives, so how could he not be excited? After all, no matter what the beautiful sisters did, they were always together. When the time was ripe, Chen Hao would be able to enjoy the blessings of having two wives. Of course, this thought only flashed through his mind. This was not the time to think about Ruo Feifei. The biggest reason why he was a little excited was naturally not because of that. Chen Hao directly blended into the world, completely concealing his aura. A moment later, two figures who had concealed their true appearances and were sitting cross-legged with their backs facing each other appeared before Chen Hao's eyes. Hee, Chen Hao laughed mischievously in his heart. Then Leng Ninghuan, who was immersed in comprehending the second barrier, clearly felt a breeze blowing on her face. Although she was a little surprised, she didn't care, but this breeze was getting stronger and stronger. Just when she realized that it was man-made, she suddenly opened her eyes. Sister, what's wrong? Leng Ninglu, who was connected to Leng Ninghuan's mind, sensed Leng Ninghuan's surprise and asked in her mind. No, nothing. Leng Ninghuan looked at Chen Hao's face that was inches away from her. Her face turned red as she replied to her sister in her mind. Sister, you're about to see him. Why are you so excited at this time? You should quickly comprehend it. Leng Ninglu said after hearing Leng Ninghuan's reply. Leng Ninghuan, who was sitting cross-legged with her back facing Leng Ninghuan, naturally couldn't see Chen Hao. Similarly, Chen Hao, who had also concealed his aura, couldn't be sensed by her. However, she could easily sense Leng Ninghuan's mood. This was clearly a phenomenon that would only occur when thinking about Chen Hao. But, sister, why is your self-control so weak? So embarrassed? While the two were conversing, Chen Hao had already kissed Leng Ninghuan's tender lips. Leng Ninghuan closed her eyes shyly and clumsily replied to Chen Hao. She had lost all thoughts in her mind, only Chen Hao. It was also at this time that Leng Ninglu said the words, "So embarrassing," because she felt the same way. But she thought it was just her sister's imagination. But, just as she said those words, two large hands suddenly cupped her face from behind, causing her to scream in shock. Leng Ninghuan instantly woke up from her stupor and hurriedly pushed Chen Hao away. This fellow laughed out loud and pulled the two girls into his embrace. Brother Hao, Leng Ninglu looked at Chen Hao in surprise. Leng Ninghuan, on the other hand, allowed Chen Hao to hug her without making a sound because she was kissed. Chen Hao smiled and gently kissed Leng Ningli's lips, saying, "The two masters arrived earlier than you. I will first teach you the secret technique of the layers of barriers, then teach them Qi. Rumble. Rumble. Ah?" Long Ting suddenly cried out when she broke the 9th layer of barrier with a punch. "What's going on?" Chen Shui also looked around in surprise. Chen Hao, who took less than half an hour to return, was also very surprised. Could it be that this barrier will be completely destroyed if one person fully comprehends it? He taught the secret technique to the sisters, Han Mei and Yun Wei, because Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Xing helped the two masters. Chen Hao didn't want to drag them down, so he taught the secret technique to the Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Xing. However, they were separated by several layers of barriers. Even if he taught them, they would need some time to learn and comprehend it. Therefore, Chen Hao didn't wait for them. But at this time, after Long Ting taught him and Chen Shui the secret technique of the 9th layer of barrier, they were about to break the barrier first. However, an unexpected scene occurred. All the barriers suddenly exploded violently with a punch from Long Ting, and all of them collapsed. Countless exclamations broke out. Whether it was the cultivators who were immersed in comprehending the secret technique or the cultivators who hadn't comprehended the first layer of barrier, they were all shocked by the aura of the collapse of the barrier. Their eyes were filled with horror as they looked at the core of the ruins. An endless pressure erupted from the core. Countless 7-colored rays of light, like fireworks exploding in the sky, poured down from the 9 heavens. What is this? What a terrifying pressure, the gate of time and space. This is the gate of time and space. A disciple of the divine palace suddenly exclaimed. When the overwhelming pressure slowly descended from the void, countless people felt as if their souls were being pressed down. Even Chen Hao was extremely shocked. A disordered feeling that went straight to the depths of their souls emerged in everyone's hearts. "Master, hurry, come with mistress and your master. This is the gate of time and space. It will teleport you to the secret realm." At this time, Old God's voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. Gate of time and space? Hearing Old God's confirmation, Chen Hao suddenly pulled Long Ting and Chen Shui. With a chi sound, he turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the sisters at lightning speed. Soon after, he arrived beside Senior Immortal Han Mei and Senior Immortal Yun Wei. Everyone, hold each other's hands. Hug each other. At this moment, Chen Hao sensed the increasingly majestic and terrifying pressure, as well as the chaotic feeling. He was slightly excited. Even he did not expect that this sex relic would not contain an absolute art inheritance, but a space-time gate. The so-called gate of time and space was mentioned in the information of the primitive secret realm. Whenever the gate of time and space appeared, all the cultivators present would be teleported to the sacred training grounds left behind from ancient times in the primitive secret realm. The reason why Chen Hao was excited, other than the sacred training grounds, was that the gate of time and space wasn't a single one. It ran through the entire universe of the primitive secret realm. In other words, the cultivators who could enter the sacred training grounds definitely weren't cultivators from the sect ruins. Cultivators from other races could also encounter the gate of time and space that would teleport them to the same sacred training grounds. Chen Hao knew that in a short while, everyone present would be teleported to an unknown secret realm. Chen Hao pulled Long Ting and Chen Shui, Long Ting pulled the sisters, and Chen Shui pulled Han Mei and Yun Wei. Brother Chen Hao. Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Xing both looked at Chen Hao. Han Mei Immortal Venerable and Yun Wei Immortal Venerable had a good impression of Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Xing, who had helped them. Seeing their expressions, they naturally knew that they wanted to go with them. Therefore, both of them looked at Chen Hao inquisitively. Chen Hao didn't hesitate and nodded. Since he had just taught them the unique skill contained in the layers of barriers, there was no need to abandon them now. Seeing Chen Hao nod, Apotheon Yun Wei directly grabbed Pan Dong Lu's hand. Gate of time and space. Ha! I didn't expect to encounter a gate of time and space so soon. Great. The first disciple of the divine palace who called out the gate of time and space said excitedly, "The third group of East Flow City, gather here. Once you enter, there is a high chance that you will encounter cultivators from other races. Now it's time for us to unite. The fourth group, come to me, be quick. It's too late. If you are not from the third group, you are also welcome to join. I am the leader of the first group. No matter who you are welcome to join. I am the leader of the eighth group. I guarantee a fair distribution. Who wants to join?" When the temple's disciples, captains, and vice-captains began to recruit, Chen Hao directly released a pitch-black energy to envelop them, clearly telling the surrounding cultivators that they were going to act alone. Many disciples of the divine palace who were at the level of a leader came, but the cultivators who came here were basically from the third and fourth groups, which were the two groups that were closest to this place when they entered the primitive secret realm. Chen Shui, Long Ting, and Chen Hao were in a group, but the cultivators in their group basically didn't come. Otherwise, Chen Hao's actions wouldn't be justified. The sisters didn't need to perform their duties, and the group didn't belong to the East Flow Division. Chapter 693. What does the space-time door mean? I believe everyone has read about it in the primitive mystic realm. Once you enter, you'll definitely encounter cultivators from other races. There's a limit to one person's power. If you don't want to die, hurry up and join us. There's not much time left. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Above their heads, the heaven and earth spirit chi gathered. The seven-colored light became brighter and brighter, and the ancient aura became more intense. In the depths of every cultivator's soul, the space-time disorder became more and more obvious. The primitive mystic realm that the space-time door leads to is the original universe's top geniuses' training ground. It runs through the galaxy and traverses the universe. If it wasn't for the collapse of the universe, we'll definitely die if we enter. That's right. The space-time law in the primitive mystic realm is so powerful. How powerful is the original universe? The universe's top geniuses' training ground isn't something we can withstand. However, after the collapse of the universe, although the training ground remains, the ferocious beasts are definitely extinct. Even so, the mechanisms and restrictions are probably not something ordinary people can withstand. Forget it, for safety's sake, I'll withdraw. I'll withdraw too. It's not necessarily safe to join a team. As the space-time door gradually formed, many cultivators joined the team formed by a few experts. However, there were also cultivators with weaker abilities who chose to leave before the space-time door formed. However, this was only a small number of cultivators who were self-aware and had a good mentality. Most cultivators, even if they were not strong enough, could not withstand the temptation of the training ground. How? Let's forget it? It's not bad for us to cultivate in the sect ruins. Seeing this, Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yun Wei looked at each other and said to Chen Hao, "Don't worry, we're here. Nothing will happen. The two of us are too weak. I'm afraid we won't be able to withstand the restrictions of the training ground. By then, we'll be a burden to you." "How? We don't ask for much. Even if we cultivate outside, it'll be enough for us to break through to the heaven immortal stage when we step out of the primitive mystic realm. That's enough." "Master, do you have to be so courteous with your disciples? Don't worry, you won't be a burden to us." "Yes, Mother, Master Yun Wei, don't think so much. The space-time law here is extremely powerful. We can go in and cultivate together. Who knows, the training ground space might be huge." Qin Shui said. Buzz. At this moment, a violent buzzing sound suddenly came from the heaven and earth. The rainbow-colored light that poured down finally completely condensed into a pot-lid-shaped light curtain, enveloping everyone. At the same time, an ancient door that was blooming with bright golden light like a mirage appeared above the ninth heaven. Huff, huff. Inside the golden ancient gate, dark clouds were rolling. Thick ancient aura and origin energy from the desolation era gushed out from the ancient gate like a pitch-black waterfall, pouring down. Wormhole. It's actually a space-time gate formed by a spatial wormhole. At this moment, a knowledgeable disciple suddenly exclaimed, "This must be the best training ground in the primal universe." How extravagant! Hiss. It was also at this moment that an endless profound aura emerged from the pitch-black black hole of ancient energy. At this moment, everyone's souls began to tremble. The feeling of space and time being in disarray caused countless cultivators with weak wills to feel like they were seeing the flow of time or the future. All sorts of strange illusions filled their minds. Even venerable immortal Han Mei and venerable immortal Yun Wei were no exception. Their eyes instantly became dull. On the other hand, Chen Hao and the other cultivators with formidable soul force and formidable strength were able to faintly see an ancient shrine flickering with 7-colored radiance within the surging dark clouds that were like a black hole. The entire shrine was refined from 7-colored jade crystals, and it was sparkling and translucent. Brilliant light flowed within it, and numerous profound and complicated ancient talisman markings seemed to be alive as they flowed within it, emitting a majestic aura that terrified the soul. A palace-type training ground. This is a palace-type training ground. It must be a training ground condensed by the top experts of the primal universe. What do you mean? Hearing that it was the cultivator who was the first to exclaim in shock, countless cultivators present looked over. There were even disciples of the sacred hall who voiced their doubts. They only felt that the palace that appeared was extremely powerful. Even the sacred palace of the human race might not be comparable to it. How powerful was the sacred palace of the human race? Before entering the primal secret region, they had cultivated in the sacred palace for more than half a year. They deeply understood this point. This is equivalent to the existence of the sacred palace of the human race. And it's definitely stronger than the sacred palace. The space-time door is about to be condensed. This time, we will all reap great rewards. Master, this is probably stronger than the sacred palace of the human race. Before the universe collapsed, it should be a top sacred palace of a powerful galaxy in this universe. It has the same status as the sacred palace. When it collapsed, the Almighty of the universe worked together to connect the starry sky and set up this training ground. If I'm not wrong, after all of you enter, countless people will be able to obtain the inheritance within. Of course, the space wormhole, which is the starry sky tunnel, is enough to show that many cultivators will be able to enter. It's actually that powerful? Hearing Old God's words, Chen Hao was shocked. Chi. At this moment, the palace that resembled a sacred palace suddenly shot out rays of mysterious rainbow light that penetrated the wormhole. It was as if a bridge had been set up in the wormhole that led to the other side of the starry sky, and it poured onto every cultivator. Whoosh. Almost at the same time, all the cultivators present turned into streams of light that merged into the wormhole and the space-time door. They disappeared in the direction of the sacred palace like shooting stars. Oh no! It was also at this moment that Chen Hao exclaimed in his heart. This was because an irresistible space-time energy caused Jin Shui and Long Ting, who were holding hands with him, to suddenly disappear. Chen Hao was extremely shocked. It felt like an instant, but the scene in front of him had completely changed, and he had entered a brand new space. There were barren mountains, and at a glance, not a single blade of grass grew. It was a stretch of barren land, and besides the ancient aura, even the spiritual energy of heaven and earth seemed to be extremely scarce. It was just like the barren mountains in front of him, barren and desolate. How could this be? Chen Hao was in disbelief. Just a moment ago he had been excited about entering the powerful training ground left behind by the primitive mystic realm, but now, Chen Hao felt as if he had returned to the secular world. No, to be precise, it was a place that was even worse than the secular world. No? Could it be an illusion? In just an instant, Chen Hao was shocked to discover that his perception was only a pitiful 100 meters. What did 100 meters mean? What surprised him even more was that his Dantian Sea of energy had actually become a dry and desolate ocean. There was not even a trace of vital essence left, and his mind power seemed to have been sucked dry, and he could not use it at all. What was even more shocking was that Chen Hao's connection with his mind seemed to have been completely cut off. Even Chen Hao felt a fear of the unknown at this moment. He tried to summon Old God, but there was no response. To be precise, it was not that there was no response, but that Chen Hao felt as if he had turned into a mortal, the most ordinary person, a person without any magical powers. What's going on? Also, why didn't they teleport together with me? Such a sudden change was completely unexpected. He slowly closed his eyes and carefully sensed his surroundings, wanting to find the reason. However, after standing there for half an hour, Chen Hao reluctantly gave up. All of this was real. He had entered a barren space and had become an ordinary young man, a young man without the slightest bit of cultivation. This kind of feeling was like a huge mountain pressing down on his heart. Everything was sealed by an invisible force that could not be touched or seen. Moreover, it was so real that Chen Hao himself could not feel the feeling of being sealed. Only his clear mind told him that he was being sealed. Since this is a sacred ground for training, it must be a kind of training ground for cultivators. Could it be that the space I entered is a transcendent mortal? Chen Hao gazed at the barren mountain in the distance. Even his innate eyesight had become mediocre. Other than the legendary transcendent mortal, what else could it be? At this moment, he was no different from an ordinary person. In terms of physical strength, Chen Hao didn't even need to test it out to know that he was powerless. He couldn't even compare to his younger self. Gula gulu, a sound that he hadn't heard for many years came from his stomach, and it made Chen Hao smile helplessly. Hunger, he was an earth celestial expert, but he actually felt hungry. How could this be? Chen Shui looked at the surrounding space in shock as she sensed her own condition. The same shock appeared on Long Ting, the Lung sisters, Venerable Han Mei, and all the other cultivators who were in the same space. The old god said that when the universe collapsed, it would destroy the independent space laws and all life. Even if the area we were teleported to is a sacred ground for training, it definitely wouldn't contain independent space laws. In other words, this place can't be that big. Chen Hao shook his head. Even if his guess was correct, when he thought about the size of the primitive secret realm and the universe before it collapsed, even if the sacred ground for training wasn't big, it should be comparable to a small planet, right? Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be a problem. But now, he was no different from an ordinary person. At this moment, even Chen Hao didn't know where to go or what to do. Could it be that he had to cultivate from the beginning? Rumble. At this moment, a loud sound suddenly came from the distant sky. Chapter 694. Dark clouds rolled, thunder and lightning filled the sky, and a fierce wind swept across the whole world. Walala, are you kidding me? A master at the Earth's celestial stage had never thought that he would be knocked over by a fierce wind and drenched by a torrential rain. It would be a joke in the cultivation world of the vast universe galaxy. But now, it was happening to Chen Hao. Bang! Chen Hao saw stars, and his body felt like it was falling apart. He crashed into a protruding hill not far away. The 9 seals of celestial sealing. It's the 9 seals of celestial sealing. The information about the primitive mystic realm appeared in Chen Hao's mind, and he was shocked. According to the records, this was an extremely rare training ground among all levels of the primitive secret realm. In the billions of years of history of the vast universe galaxy, the primitive mystic realm had been discovered countless times, but the 9 seals of celestial sealing had only appeared a few times, and they had all appeared in the primitive mystic realm of the heaven celestial stage. This was an extremely cruel place for cultivation. It was much crueler than the turning into a mortal that Chen Hao had thought at first. Turning into a mortal meant that one's cultivation would be sealed. One had to break through the seals layer by layer and obtain the various daos contained in the seals. Then one could step out of this space. There were no other dangers except for the conflicts between practitioners. But the 9 seals of celestial sealing were different. All the practitioners who entered this space would not have their true core strength sealed. Instead, their true core strength would be drained, and they would be transformed into ferocious beasts by the space. I didn't expect to encounter the rare 9 seals of celestial sealing. Isn't this too miserable for the practitioners of the human tribe? Chen Hao, who was knocked dizzy, tightly grabbed onto a crack in the rock and hid in a shelter from the wind. He stared at the pouring rain and frowned as he pondered. He gazed into the distance, but besides the rain, he couldn't see anything. He could only hear the rumbling of thunder and the howling of the wind. The 9 seals of celestial sealing. It's the 9 seals of celestial sealing, which is rarely seen in millions of years. It's tailor-made for the god tribe. Although it's suppressed, it's stronger than any other tribe. When Chen Hao and the others opened the seal, countless sect relics from all over the primitive mystic realm opened at the same time, even though no one had broken through the 9 barriers. Countless cultivators from the 10 major galaxies were transported to the 9 immortal sealing taboos. When they realized that it was the space of the 9 immortal sealing taboos, the cultivators from the Shun clan were the most excited. Due to their innately powerful bloodlines, they had an absolute advantage in the 9 seals of immortality and transcendent mortal 9 seals. This was especially so in the initial stages of the trial. Oh no, these are the 9 seals of immortality. At this moment, other than the cultivators who had entered from Chen Hao's side, the human cultivators who had entered from other places were the most terrified. There was no other reason. Among all the major races, the human race was born with the worst and weakest bloodline. This way, this way. The storm lasted for a short 15 minutes before it came to an abrupt end. Dead silence was restored once again. At this moment, Chen Hao quickly climbed up a higher hill and yelled with all his strength. In the distance, he saw small figures scattered all over the place. Although he couldn't see their faces clearly, he could still recognize that they were the girls and the others. Fortunately, it's not far away. Chen Hao said comfortingly when he saw them looking at him and running toward him. Why are you so? Long Ting ran over quickly and couldn't help laughing when she saw Chen Hao's sorry state. Why are you so fast? Chen Hao looked at Long Ting in surprise. Although this girl was not far from him, her running speed was more than 3 times faster than Chen Shui and the others. Even the hill he was on was reached by Long Ting after a few leaps. I see you are. How dare you? Long Ting, who was laughing, grabbed Chen Hao and said with a red face as she waved her fist coquettishly. Okay, Long Mei is mighty. I won't say any more. I'll rely on you to maintain the world's peace for now. Chen Hao, whose drenched Taoist robe was grabbed by Long Ting like a little chick, said pitifully as he hung in the air. That's more like it. It took the girls, Han Mei, Pan Donglu, Pan Dongxing, and the others more than 10 minutes to reach a distance of a few miles. Even so, when they arrived, they were all panting and sweating. Why are you all fine? Why am I so miserable? Such a strong wind didn't blow you away? Didn't you encounter a rainstorm? Chen Hao asked confusedly. Although the others were also in a sorry state, they were not like Chen Hao, who was covered in mud. Blown away? The girls were also puzzled. Brother Chen, I know what's going on. I've read a detailed record of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, which was once encountered by my ancestor. The storm just now was transformed by our energy. Brother Chen, your true essence is vigorous, and your essence, qi, and spirit are strong. It should be because you have reached a very high level of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing and triggered a seal that is too strong. Pan Donglu said. Yes, I also saw it. In the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, the stronger the seal, the stronger the seal. The only thing that is not restricted is the origin bloodline. So, Brother Chen, I'm afraid, you're not even as strong as us. The strongest here is the God race, and the other races are also stronger than us. Their bloodline origin is strong. Pan Dongxing said. Then, am I not very miserable now? Chen Hao glanced at the complacent Long Ting and the expressions of the girls, especially Chen Shui, who slightly raised the corners of her mouth, and said gloomily, "This is temporary." In the primitive secret realm, once one of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing is opened, all the other transmission points will be opened, which is also to ensure fairness. Moreover, in a short time, we should not encounter foreign races. However, we must go deeper as soon as possible. Cultivation and comprehension are the most important things to break through the restrictions. Pan Donglu said. Obviously, she was much more prepared before entering. Tell us in detail. What we saw was all introductory information. Chen Hao said. Chen Hao and the others saw the introductory information. The detailed information about the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing could only be recorded in the handbooks of the ancestors of the powerful families. The Long family had such a handbook, but even if there was a record of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, Long Ting, this lazy girl, could not have seen it. We are all mortals now, and we have to bear everything as mortals: eat, drink, gurgle, puff, ha. Pan Donglu just mentioned food and drink. Not only Chen Hao, but also Fan Dongxing and the girls, almost all of them, except for the foodie Long Ting, let out a gurgle sound. Chapter 695. The reason was very simple. Long Ting had just come in after a full meal, and Chen Hao and the others had not eaten for a long time. All their energy had been drained and they had become mortals. It would be strange if they were not hungry. The deeper you go, the stronger the ferocious beasts will be, and the denser the energy of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven will be. There will also be ancient elixirs, immortal caves, ancient tombs, and so on. However, the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing are also the cruelest training grounds in the primitive secret realm. The 9 restrictions are 9 life and death checkpoints. Breaking through one checkpoint and recovering one's strength, you can go deeper. Flowing eastward said, we humans are limited by our bloodline origin and are the weakest race in the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing. It's okay in the later stages, but in the beginning, we can only avoid. Isn't the constitution of the elves worse than ours? Chen Shui asked with a slight frown. It's not the same. Under the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, although they are similar to us humans in the beginning, the elves are naturally close to nature and easier to comprehend and break through the restrictions. Especially the innate elves, which are the legendary embryos of Tao. Although there are very few of them, they are extremely powerful. They are the opposite of the Protoss, who have strong bodies. For the 2 races, the Protoss are the strongest in the early stages, and the elves are the strongest in the later stages. They are most suitable for them. Moreover, although the elves are weak in the early stages, they have wings like the winged race and are born with the ability to fly, which ensures their safety in the early stages. The winged race and the elves were all birdmen who were born with the ability to fly. The dark demon race, the insect race, and the heavenly demon race were between the Protoss and the elves, and their comprehensive talent was stronger. The ghost race was born with the ability to hide. Under the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, ordinary cultivators could not sense their existence, but they were absolutely awesome at self-protection and sneak attacks. The succubus race was born with the ability to create illusions, making people unknowingly fall for it. So, it seems that we humans are the weakest? Yes, we humans don't have any advantage in bloodline talent. In addition to Long Ting, even Chen Hao frowned slightly at this moment. We are no different from mortals now. We have to go deep into the place where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven and earth are thick. Everyone discussed as they hurried forward. Through Pan Donglu and Pan Dongxing's detailed introduction, Chen Hao and the others also had a more detailed understanding of the 9 restrictions. Now, what they had to do was to quickly pass through the barren land before them and enter the area with the spirit chi of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven so that they could cultivate and comprehend. 2 hours later, a huge mountain range appeared in front of everyone. This mountain range is endless. After passing through it, we should have passed through the desolate area. Huff! Fan Dongsheng panted as he spoke. His sweat had long since soaked his clothes, his lips were dry and cracked, and he was hungry. Other than Long Ting, everyone else was almost the same. All of them were exhausted. Moreover, after Pan Donglu's detailed introduction, as expected, Chen Hao was the most miserable one. As a man, he was actually the last one. He was not even as good as Chen Shui, the 2 beautiful sisters, and the 2 old masters. What made Chen Hao even more depressed was that Long Ting had joked about carrying him on her back. It was really shameful. However, after gritting his teeth and persevering until now, although Chen Hao still looked miserable, there was a trace of imperceptible excitement in his eyes. It's so high. I'm afraid it will take a few hours to cross it. Usually, we can fly over it in a flash. Do you want to take a rest? Pan Donglu said. As he spoke, he looked at Chen Hao. Everyone, including Senior Immortal Han Mei and Senior Immortal Yun Wei, also looked at Chen Hao. Don't look at me. I'm very good. It doesn't matter if I rush up in one breath. Chen Hao wiped the sweat from his face and said, domineeringly. After that, he walked forward directly. Qin Shui glared at Chen Hao and said secretly, "You want to save face." After 6 hours, they finally reached the top of the mountain. What they saw was green. Although there were still undulating mountains in the distance, there were ancient trees and forests, lush grass, full of vitality and vitality. The aura of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, the law of heaven, and the ancient origin energy rushed to their faces. The air was filled with a faint fragrance. In the forest, cranes were flying, birds were singing, and the brook was tinkling. Compared with the barren land where they had traveled for 10 hours in a row due to hunger and thirst, this was undoubtedly a paradise. Finally, we're out. Rabbit, hurry up. I'm starving. Finally, there's food. Water. There's water over there. Excited shouts came from not far away. There were already people who had entered the mountain wilderness before Chen Hao and the others, and they excitedly pounced towards the mountain wilderness. There are spiritual fruits over there. There's water. Hurry up. At the foot of the mountain, only 1,000 meters away, there was a clear small lake. In the middle of the lake, there was a small tree swaying in the air. There were a few fruits emitting dense light. Even if they were only in the state of mortals, they could still see them at a glance. They were almost certain that the faint fragrance in the air was emitted from the fruit. There was no doubt that this was the extreme spiritual fruit. Long Ting pinched her nose and took a deep breath. Suddenly her eyes widened. It's the rootless spiritual fruit. The rootless spiritual fruit only appears in the spiritual spring. It contains the purest spiritual chi of heaven and earth and absorbs the law of heaven here. With it, we can comprehend and break through faster. The spiritual spring also contains a trace of... Pan Donglu said. Let's go and grab it. Bang! Long Ting directly stepped on the ground and ran over first. Sister Long Ting, be careful. There must be ferocious beasts in the water. Pan Donglu shouted in surprise. Foodie, when you see food, your speed is really fast. Let's go. Chen Hao glanced at everyone's surprised expression and said. Obviously, although everyone saw that Long Ting's speed was fast, they did not expect it to be so fast. Her speed was definitely 5 times faster than a mortal's. This spiritual fruit belongs to our third group. Everyone else, stop. A figure shouted loudly. He rushed over with a group of people. At this moment, there were only 2 groups of people. In addition to them, there was Chen Hao and the others. Obviously, these words were said to Long Ting, Chen Hao, and the others. It belongs to whoever grabs it. Long Ting appeared a little later, but she was obviously faster. How could she agree? Junior Sister Long, I didn't expect you to be so fast. However, can you grab it? Everything depends on strength. This is not against the rules. Don't make it difficult for me. After a slight hesitation, the leader of the third group said directly with a trace of cold arrogance in his eyes. He had already recognized Long Ting, Chen Hao, and the others. If this were not the 9 restrictions of Immortal Sealing, he might not have said so. But here, he did not have to worry about anything. Everyone was mortal, and strength was strength in numbers. Why would they be afraid of Chen Hao? Moreover, if they could get the rootless fruit in advance, they would undoubtedly be able to comprehend and break through faster. As long as they maintained this advantage, the benefits they would obtain in the future would be immeasurable. This was definitely not as simple as a few rootless fruits. Long Ting was slightly stunned. She paused for a moment and looked at Chen Hao and the others behind her. She frowned and said, "We only want 9, and the rest are yours. You can drink as much as you want from the spiritual spring. As for the rootless fruit, I can only say sorry. There are only a few dozen in total, and we can barely get 1 each." After hesitating for a moment, the leader of the third group said directly and coldly. Originally, because Long Ting and Qin Shui were both genius disciples of the Divine Temple, It was not a big deal to give them 2 or even a few, but now was not the time to be merciful. After all, they were 2 teams. In the short term, because they were in the same place, they would definitely be in a competitive relationship. If they gave Long Ting the fruit and it was eaten by the powerful Chen Hao, wouldn't they be completely suppressed in the future? In that case, we can divide it equally according to the number of people, right? Sorry. Drink some spiritual spring water. You all can leave. We will take this place. The leader of the third group said resolutely, "Go pick it, what are you waiting for?" Yes. The dozens of cultivators who stopped were a little nervous. However, it was every man for himself. With the leader of the Divine Temple's disciples, they were just small soldiers and were not afraid of offending the Fast East sect and the others. This was all within the rules. Little Ting, let them pick it. At this moment, Chen Hao said calmly. Hearing Chen Hao's words, Chen Shui, the sisters, Han Mei, Yun Wei and the others all heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that Chen Hao's character would not be able to hold back and flip out, but now the situation was forcing them. Once a conflict broke out, they would only be at a disadvantage. Long Ting glared fiercely at the leader of the third group and forcibly endured it. If it was her, she would not be afraid. Once she snatched it, she would run away. With her current strength and speed, although she could not beat them, running away was not a problem. But Chen Hao, Chen Shui and the others could not run away. Therefore, she could only hold back her anger and endure. Wait, let us drink some first so as not to dirty the water. Just as one person was about to rush to the spiritual spring lake, Chen Hao suddenly said. As Chen Hao spoke, he stepped forward. If you don't want to drink, go and pick it. The fifth group leader said coldly. No matter what, he had definitely offended Chen Hao and the others. Therefore, after hearing Chen Hao's words, he did not mind being more thorough. As long as Chen Hao and the others did not drink the spiritual spring, then Chen Hao and the others would not be able to obtain the trace of Heaven Dao Law in the spiritual spring. Wouldn't that be better? Plop, plop. This is too much. Let's go. We will not lower ourselves to their level. Long Ting said angrily. It's fine, even if we can't drink it, we can soak our feet. Chen Hao smiled faintly and was extremely calm. Chen Shui, the 2 beautiful sisters, Venerable Han Mei, and Venerable Yun Wei all looked at Chen Hao strangely. Is this still Chen Hao? When did his temper become so good, and he could endure it so well? It was just that they were so angry. It was obviously abnormal. Chen Shui walked to Chen Hao's side and said softly, Don't do anything rash. You are the weakest now. Just wait for the rootless fruit. Chen Hao's lips curled up slightly as he whispered. Fuck, there's a strange fish. Bang! Quick, a few people come and block it. This is a spirit trout. Our luck is too good, we have just arrived and we have already encountered rootless fruit, spirit trout, and spiritual spring lake. Ha! Splash! Splash! Fuck! Normally I can kill 10,000 with one finger, but now I am too weak. Quick, a few people come and help. We can at least catch the fish, right? Long Ting said unwillingly. Sorry. Wu Shan is also very sorry. I won't say the reason. Anyway, it is very painful to write now, and my right hand is swollen. Chapter 696. Leader Blue Maple is really domineering. Look, there are 4 female disciples of the Divine Palace among them. Pandong Lu will definitely become a disciple of the Divine Palace, not to mention Chen Hao. That's called confidence. Leader Blue Maple is also a genius in the Divine Palace. He is only at the peak of the medium stage of the Earth celestial stage. In the future, he will not be worse than Chen Lin. There is no need to be afraid of them. It's just within the scope of the rules. If you offend someone, you will definitely offend someone. There is no need to be afraid. You know, under the 9 restrictions of the celestial ceiling technique, you will always be ahead. Leader Blue Maple is so ruthless because he naturally treats them as competitors. If they were his weakness, he would not be so ruthless. Who cares about them? Since we have joined, we will act according to orders. This is a competition between them. It has nothing to do with us. Several practitioners who did not enter the water, but automatically formed a protective posture on both sides of Blue Maple. They looked at the cold and arrogant leader of the 3rd Regiment and whispered to each other. Even they did not expect Blue Maple to be so domineering. These people were all from the East Division. Who didn't know Pandong Lu and Pandong Sheng? Moreover, they also saw the terrifying strength displayed by Chen Hao when he fought Chen Lin. Long Ting, Chen Shui, and the Lung sisters all had the mark of a disciple of the Divine Palace on their chests, but Blue Maple did not give them any face at all. You? Long Ting clenched her fists angrily. It's okay. Strength is respected. They are also within the scope of the rules, aren't they? Let's go and soak our feet first. Chen Hao did not look at the domineering Blue Maple. He pulled Long Ting and continued to walk toward the small lake. This is too much. Brother Hao, I can't stand it. I will gather people and destroy them. Long Ting said angrily. She was, after all, the captain, and with an expert like Chen Hao, as well as Chen Shui and the Lung sisters, the 3 disciples of the temple, if she were to make a call, she would definitely be able to pull in many people. Shoo, don't gather people. Let's eat the spirit fruit later. Chen Hao stopped Long Ting with a smile and lowered his voice. You're so weak now. How can you eat? Brother Hao, you can leave first. I will fight with them later. Long Ting said. Hao, don't be rash. Chen Shui also whispered. Hao, forget it. Let's continue forward and look at other places. There might be more spirit fruits. There's no need to fight with them. Han Mei said. Her expression didn't change much. She and Venerable Han Mei had long been accustomed to the law of the jungle in the cultivation world. This wasn't Limitless Star. With their talent, cultivation, and strength, it was normal for them to encounter this kind of situation in vast universe galaxy. It was just like when they first entered the ruins of their sect. Even a place to cultivate was robbed. How could they not endure such excessive, teasing words? Forget it, forget it. Let's go. Long Ting looked at Chen Hao and hesitated for a moment before speaking. If she was alone, she would have run away as soon as she could. However, everyone else was present, which made her afraid. At this moment, Chen Hao's words and expression didn't seem like he was going to restrain himself at all, and he was going to erupt later. This caused Long Ting to not dare say anything too extreme. If she provoked this fellow, then the one to suffer in the end would definitely be them. Hee. Chen Hao smiled and shook his head. He casually picked up a piece of gravel with the tip of his foot. His movement wasn't obvious, but it fell into his hand. At this moment, he was at least a few hundred meters away from Lan Feng and the others. They had all become mortals, so the other party definitely couldn't see him. Do you see it? Chen Hao said in a low voice as he gripped a fist-sized rock. The corner of his mouth curled up, and his expression carried a hint of arrogance. What's wrong? Pandong Lu, Pandong Sheng, and the others also gathered around Chen Hao, looking at him in confusion. Chen Hao shouted in a low voice, ready to enjoy the surprised expressions of everyone. However, them so hard? Can you not be so funny? Chen Shui looked at the embarrassed Chen Hao and directly laughed out loud as she said, Long Ting, the sisters, and everyone couldn't help but laugh. Break for me. Creak. Brother Hao, we're all mortals now. Ling Ning laughed. Chen Hao's funny behavior made everyone temporarily forget about the suffocation in their hearts. Okay, let's go. Let's not lower ourselves to their level. Long Ting pulled Chen Hao and said, This stone doesn't give me any face. Let's pick another one. Chen Hao said hesitantly. He wanted to show off his skills to make everyone feel at ease, but he didn't expect to expose himself. He didn't want to admit defeat and picked up another stone that looked slightly worse, but the result was still miserable. Strange, this stone looks like an ordinary stone, there's no reason why it can't be broken. Brother, mortals, we're mortals now. Pan Dongsheng couldn't help but say. He looked at Chen Hao with a respectful gaze, and didn't look down on Chen Hao because he made a fool of himself. In his opinion, Chen Hao might not be able to change his state of mind after becoming a mortal. Leader Lan Feng, a total of 49 fruits. Leader Lan Feng, this spirit trout is too slippery, it's not easy to catch. Let's eat the rootless fruit and cultivate before catching it. At this moment, the cultivator in charge of harvesting the rootless fruit succeeded, and the other cultivators immediately gave up on catching the spirit trout. They were all mortals now, and it was difficult to catch a spirit trout that was as long as a person, even if there were many of them. You guys wait here. At this moment, Chen Hao gave up on pinching the stone and looked in Lan Feng's direction as he spoke to everyone. After he finished speaking, he was about to walk over. Forget it, they have more people, we can't win. Long Ting grabbed the unwilling Chen Hao. With her strength, she was definitely able to pick him up like an eagle picking up a little chick. However, what Long Ting did not expect was that this time, Chen Hao only lightly reached out and grabbed Long Ting's hand. It was as if he was holding on to a steel bar. Don't worry. When have I ever done something I'm not confident in? Those rotten stones were really too hard just now. Just watch. You don't tell me you've comprehended the first seal? Long Ting asked in astonishment. That's not it. Chen Hao smiled and let go of Long Ting's hand. He turned around and walked towards Lan Feng's group. At this moment, Lan Feng and the others had already gathered together excitedly to distribute the rootless fruits. I'll go with you. Long Ting said. I'll go too. As a man, Fan Dongsheng had no reason not to go. Since we're going to snatch, then let's go together. Chen Shui and the others knew that they couldn't stop Chen Hao, and felt that Chen Hao was definitely confident, so they spoke one after another. Chen Hao hesitated for a moment, but didn't stop them. He said, "Follow behind me. It's so fragrant, just the smell alone contains the pure energy of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven and earth. If we can eat one, it will definitely allow us to quickly comprehend some things. Leader Lan Feng, you can distribute it." Gulp, gulp. Everyone's eyes lit up as they stared at the rootless fruits, which were emitting a dense aura and a strong fragrance. They swallowed their saliva. Yes, Leader Lan Feng, let's distribute it quickly, I'm starving. Leader Lan Feng? Everyone's gaze turned towards Lan Feng, but they discovered that Lan Feng was frowning and looking into the distance. What, you're not convinced? Lan Feng's gaze was cold as he stared at Chen Hao, who was slowly walking towards them. He asked coldly, "You are indeed very strong, but you have to understand the current situation. Otherwise, I don't mind teaching all of you a lesson." Is that so? Chen Hao calmly replied. His pace didn't change as he walked forward step by step. Don't force me to make a move. This is allowed by the rules. Lan Feng frowned. The others also stared at Chen Hao. Even though they weren't as arrogant as Lan Feng, their gazes were still filled with displeasure. Why don't you try? Chen Hao continued to walk forward calmly. He gestured for Long Ting and the others to stop. You're courting death. Cripple this brat for me. Leader Lan Feng. Hearing Lan Feng's words, the cultivators beside him didn't immediately carry out the order. Instead, they looked at him a little apprehensively. One of them said, "Everyone knows each other. Whoever is stronger will get the fruit. Just teach them a lesson and forget about it." Yes, Leader Lan Feng, just let them know how difficult it is and retreat. These people obviously had some misgivings. After all, the rules were the rules. If they really crippled the 4 temple disciples and the Pan-East current, they would definitely be in trouble in the future. They didn't have the same background as Lan Feng. Shut up. Do you still want the spirit fruit or not? This is an order. You're just executors. Even if the sky falls, I, Lan Feng, will hold it up. With the 9 seals of immortal sealing, do you think we're afraid of him? Whoever defeats him will get 2 rootless fruits. 2? I'll do it. You don't know what's good for you. Strength is everything. Under such circumstances, you still want to snatch it? I don't care who you are. Whoosh. A burly man with a ferocious face had been waiting for Lan Feng's words. When he heard that there were 2 rootless fruits, he immediately jumped out. This guy was obviously a demon cultivator. The blood of a demon beast flowed in his body. His body was 2 heads taller than Chen Hao, and he looked like a giant. Crawl down for me. The fierce man opened his powerful arms, looked down at Chen Hao, and slapped him directly. Slap. Chen Hao suddenly raised his head and slapped him hard in the face. The huge figure rolled directly. He didn't even have time to scream. He flew 3 meters away and lay there motionless. He fainted directly. The crisp and loud sound of the slap stunned everyone. Was this a mortal? In everyone's opinion, the fierce man who stood out could crush the slender and petite Chen Hao to death. However, the result was that he was sent flying by a slap from Chen Hao. Chen Hao's footsteps didn't even stop. His expression was calm, but the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. He looked straight at Lan Feng and approached him step by step. "Go, all of you go." Lan Feng was also shocked by Chen Hao's slap. He was even more shocked by Chen Hao's calm expression and mocking gaze. He was a little panicked as he gave the order. Bang! Just as the shocked crowd was about to rush forward, Chen Hao suddenly took a step forward and rushed forward. His speed was incomparable to that of an ordinary mortal. He quickly closed in on Lan Feng. Chapter 697. Come on. Stop him for me. Slap, slap, slap. Chen Hao's footwork was light and agile. He slapped Lan Feng repeatedly with his right hand. Every time he slapped Lan Feng would fly out. After 5 or 6 consecutive slaps, everyone was stunned. They didn't understand why Chen Hao, who was also a human, could be so ferocious even though he was not strong under the celestial ceiling restrictions. This was real strength, not a simple technique. Because of this, it was even more terrifying. After all, everyone present was an ace at the Earth's celestial stage. Even if they had become mortals because of the celestial ceiling restrictions, their eyesight, reaction, and basic combat skills were absolutely solid. There was no reason for the gap between them to be so big. In a moment, everyone stopped in their tracks in fear and retreated in fear. All of them kept quiet out of fear. This was simply a ferocious beast in human form. Come on. Chen Hao grabbed Lan Feng's neck with one hand and lifted him into the air like a chicken. Lan Feng, who was cold and domineering just now, was so frightened that his face turned pale and he struggled to roar. Slap, slap, slap. Chen Hao didn't say a word. He controlled his strength and slapped Lan Feng several times in a row. Lan Feng was dizzy and saw stars. In a flash, Lan Feng's face was swollen like a pig's head. Many of his teeth were knocked out, and his mouth was full of blood. He couldn't even scream. Bang! Immediately, Chen Hao threw Lan Feng up and kicked him straight. Lan Feng was kicked 10 meters away and fell to the ground like a dead dog. Get lost! Chen Hao's gaze swept over the others as he calmly spat out a word. But no one dared to make a sound. The situation was compelling. All of them kept quiet out of fear and retreated dejectedly. Lan Feng, who hadn't fainted yet, struggled to stand up. However, he clutched his chest, which was full of broken ribs, and howled at Chen Hao with his mouth full of air. Li Genghua light. No one understood what he said. Disappear in 1 minute, Chen Hao said calmly. At this moment, compared to the fierce man, Chen Hao's figure was still small. However, in the eyes of the crowd, he had become a ferocious beast in human form. Moreover, he was a cold-blooded and merciless beast. Especially his calm tone and expression, it made people feel that even if he killed them, he would not blink an eye. In an instant, everyone, including Lan Feng, who was still talking nonsense, suppressed their anger and left in a hurry with people supporting them. What are you waiting for? Come and eat, come and eat. I'm so hungry. At this moment, Chen Hao's face changed faster than flipping a book. He returned to normal and sat cross-legged in front of a pile of rootless fruits. He picked them up and began to eat them. It's really sweet and tastes good. It is indeed a special spirit fruit. The moment the fruit entered his stomach, Chen Hao felt a pure stream of heat appear in his dantian. At the same time, he could clearly feel the mysterious laws, although very weak. Brother Chen Hao, quickly try to refine and comprehend after eating one. The spirit fruit that grows under the 9 restrictions of celestial ceiling is not just a spirit fruit. It can naturally absorb the laws of heaven here. If we eat it, it can help us to comprehend and break through faster. However, we are mortals now, so we can't eat too much at once. Fan Dongxing reminded. Before the crowd could eat, Long Ting rushed over without hesitation. She held one fruit in each hand and ignored Fan Dongxing's reminder. Well, master, come and eat. If you wait any longer, the foodie will finish it all. Then you two eat too. Don't be shy. Chen Hao handed 2 fruits to Fan Dongxing. Thank you, brother. You're the foodie. Crunch crunch. Long Ting glared at Chen Hao without concealing anything, but did not stop eating. Brother Chen Hao, there's a cave over there. Let's cultivate here for a while before moving forward. Such a place is rare. It is completely luck that we encountered it. It is better to improve our strength first. Fan Dongxing took the spirit fruit and handed one to Fan Donglu, but he did not eat it directly. Instead, he pointed to a man-made cave across the small lake and said, "Well, this place is really good. There is a spirit spring and spirit trout. Let's cultivate here for a while." Chen Hao replied. The entrance of the cave wasn't large, but the inside of the cave was very large. Moreover, it wasn't completely man-made. Inside, there was a small stream that connected to the spirit spring lake. It was clearly the upper reaches of the spirit spring, and it was very deep inside. It was rugged and winding. On both sides of the cave, there were many independent rooms that were man-made. Inside the rooms, there were even low-lying areas that formed spirit springs. Inside each cave, there were actually runes protecting it. The ceiling of the cave was inlaid with night crystals that illuminated the inside of the cave, making it as bright as day. Obviously, this was a place specially for cultivators to meditate in seclusion. Chen Hao took out 6 rootless fruits and gave them to Fan Donglu and Fan Dongxing, but the 2 refused. Finally, Chen Hao said, "Don't drag us down." The 2 were embarrassed to accept it. "How did you recover so fast? Can't the 9 seals of immortal seals seal you?" After Fan Dongxing and Fan Donglu chose a small cave and began to refine the spirit medicine, Chen Shui, who had been holding back for a long time, finally asked, "I know what's going on. It must be his physical body that evolved automatically." Long Ting said, "It seems so. My physical strength is still recovering, and it's recovering faster and faster. But there is still no true essence in mind power." Chen Hao said, "Originally, he was the most miserable and the weakest. At the beginning of the journey, he was the most miserable and the most depressed. He was a dignified man, but he was not even as good as Senior Immortal Han Mei and Senior Immortal Yun Wei. But gradually, he found that his strength was getting stronger and faster. At that time, Chen Hao knew that his abnormal genes and physical body began to evolve automatically to adapt to this space. In fact, when he started to climb the mountain, his strength was far beyond ordinary people. It was just that he was sensing this subtle change and did not show it. Looking at you two, the 2 of us are really old. Let's go find a cave to cultivate. You 2 can chat for a while and start cultivating too. Don't waste the medicinal power. This rootless fruit is very precious." Han Mei Venerable said, "Yes, more than 10 years ago, you were still little guys in front of us. Now, Master has to look up to you. Master, don't think like that. How old are you? In the cultivation world, how can you be considered old if you are less than 1,000 years old? In the past, the conditions of the Wuji star were not good. But in the future, with us here, we can get whatever you want. You can eat the rootless fruit like a fruit. Later, I will catch some spirit trout. When I have mind power and true essence, I will open the space. There are many good things. In the future, you can enjoy it as much as you want." "Ha," Chen Hao said. "Well, you don't have to comfort us. Masters, Brother Hao is telling the truth. You are only a few hundred years old. Don't think like that. Otherwise, you will lose your Taoist heart. Not to mention the Wuji star, even in the vast universe galaxy, more than half of the cultivators are stuck in the Earth's celestial stage. Many of them are thousands of years old. In fact, you are limited by the Wuji star. You don't have powerful unique skills and the support of your foundation. Otherwise, you would not be worse than anyone else. Look, the disciples you taught have all become disciples of the Holy Temple. This is much stronger than any of the top clans." Long Ting actually spoke in a rare serious tone. "Little Shui, Huan, and Lei, we have some credit. How? We didn't teach anything. brother Hao is a freak. He is an exception. What are you talking about? Okay, let's go. What are you doing? Taking a bath. Don't you see that I am covered in mud? When Senior Celestial Han Mei and Senior Celestial Yun Wei left, Chen Hao took off his clothes in front of Qin Shui, Long Ting and the sisters. Let's go, Chen Shui said angrily. Haha. Long Ting laughed foolishly. Brother Hao, give me your clothes. I will help you wash them. The well-behaved Lung Ning Huan blushed and took the Taoist robe from Chen Hao. Huan is the best. Do you want this too? Plop. You are murdering your husband. Chen Shui stretched out her hand and pushed the shameless Chen Hao into the spiritual spring. Although she knew that he would not take off his shorts, she could not stand his flirting. You deserve it. Let's go. The four girls laughed and walked out. Voila! After the four girls left, Chen Hao came out of the water. He wiped the water droplets on his face and smiled. Immediately, he sat cross-legged in the spiritual spring and began to cultivate happily. The 9 restrictions of celestial sealing obviously can't suppress my body. As long as I can comprehend the special great Tao law here, I can quickly control my true essence and psychokinesis. However, I must advance step by step. The medicinal power of the rootless fruit can't be wasted. Chen Hao sensed that the rootless fruit's energy and great Tao law in his dantian were becoming more and more active. His mind slowly integrated into it. Tao law nature. Even if he did not have the protection of a freak body that could evolve on its own, Chen Hao did not feel any pressure. He followed his heart and cultivated naturally. This did not mean that he wanted to slow down the pace of cultivation, nor did it mean that he gave up on exploiting himself. It was a kind of mental detachment. Just like Lan Feng and the others just now, Chen Hao's calmness was not an act. In fact, he did not take them seriously at all. Anger? Those people were not worthy of his anger. When it was time to attack, he would attack. Of course, if his physical strength did not recover at all, he could only endure it. There was no need to be a hot-headed prick. Phew! After a full 4 hours, Chen Hao slowly opened his eyes. I can't even store a bit of true essence. The heavenly Tao law contained in the rootless fruit is incomplete. It seems that it is impossible to comprehend it in a short period of time. The spirit trout should also have heavenly Tao law fragments. Let's catch one and try. Splash! Chen Hao jumped out of the spiritual spring and came to the entrance of the cave. He saw the Taoist robe that Lung Ning Huan had placed at the entrance of the cave. Chapter 698. After an hour, what made Chen Hao depressed was that after losing the rootless fruit in the spirit spring lake, the spirit trout had hidden somewhere. Even though Chen Hao had recovered some physical strength, he could not find any trace of the spirit trout in the cool and deep lake water, let alone catch it. Fortunately, there is no shortage of ordinary fruits and animals here, so I don't have to worry about food and clothing. Chen Hao looked up at the sky, then down at the ground, and then at the lush vegetation in the depths, and thought to himself, a complete law is dissolved in heaven and earth and is omnipresent. If I want to recover my spiritual power, I can only rely on my own comprehension. In fact, after swallowing the rootless fruit, Chen Hao also found that although the fragments of the heavenly Tao contained in it could be directly in his dantian, he still had to rely on himself to comprehend it. The only advantage was that it shortened the time to catch the fragments of the heavenly Tao. These fragments of the heavenly Tao were extremely mysterious and complicated, and definitely could not be comprehended in a short time. As Fan Dongxing and Fan Donglu said, in the first level of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, there were not many places with cave residences and spirit springs for cultivation. If a cultivator was obtained by the spirit fruits and spirit herbs and really took this as a shortcut, he would probably end up in a miserable state. Since it's a place of inheritance, there's no reason for it to be obtained through spirit herbs. When this training space was set up, it was definitely impossible to integrate the heavenly Tao into the spirit herbs. The reason it's here now is because the spirit herbs have naturally absorbed part of the heavenly Tao fragments after a long time. To be precise, it's the result of their evolution. Just like how my physical body evolves with the environment. It must be like this. Just as Chen Hao stood in front of the cave and pondered, the others also came out of their cultivation state. Obviously, they also found that they had obtained the fragments of the heavenly Tao but could not comprehend it for the time being. After a discussion with the others, Chen Hao really decided to focus on cultivation and comprehension here for the time being. Little Wu, you're finally here. In the sect ruins, two figures sat cross-legged and looked at Helian Wuzi, who had just arrived. This was already the second year since Chen Hao and the others entered the 9 restrictions of Immortal Sealing. Tan Tai Lien and Xia Yuyu had already arrived. At this moment, there were no other cultivators in the entire sect ruins. They had not seen each other for more than 10 years in the primal secret realm. Naturally, they were very excited to see each other again. At this moment, Helian Wuzi became more and more ethereal like an immortal. Her beautiful hair fluttered and her small face that was as cold as the moon seemed to be shrouded by a layer of faint moonlight. It allowed people to clearly see that absolutely beautiful appearance, but in the blink of an eye, it was as if they hadn't seen anything at all. Xiao Wu, what's going on? Tan Tai Lien and Xia Yuyu asked in surprise. At this moment, Tan Tai Lien had already coiled up her fine black hair, clearly telling everyone that she was already a woman. In fact, this was the first time she had truly fused her yin and yang with Chen Hao. After losing her primordial yin body, she was already a woman. However, she did not tie up her long hair. It wasn't until the last time she really walked together with Chen Hao that she changed her hairstyle. She, who was originally otherworldly and elegant, had an additional trace of tranquility and gentleness. Using modern words to describe her, she was a beautiful young married woman that attracted endless fanciful thoughts. The picturesque Xia Yuyu's pure and flawless eyes had not changed in the slightest for many years. Not to mention that she originally had a face that could topple cities. Even if she didn't, just her pair of beautiful eyes could mesmerize all living beings. My power of reincarnation is becoming stronger and stronger. Xiao Lianyu, I'm a little scared. Helian Wuzi, who had landed beside the two, directly expressed her worries. This was the first time she had seen a familiar sister in more than 10 years. During this period of time, especially after she had boarded the aircraft and rushed here, when she was meditating and cultivating on the aircraft, some scenes that did not belong to her at all would automatically appear in her mind. It was as if thousands of lifetimes had floated and sunk, seriously disturbing her tranquil heart lake. However, not only did it not affect her cultivation, it instead became even more terrifying. At this moment, with every breath she took, Helian Wuzi felt as if she had become one with heaven and earth. Her body was filled with energy that was as vast as the mountains and seas. She was certain that as long as she was willing, she could trigger the heavenly punishment at any time and step into the heavenly immortal realm here. However, she did not dare to. Xiao Wu, your aura is very strong, so strong that it scares me. What are you afraid of? Xia Yu asked, puzzled. I'm afraid that I'm no longer myself. Helian Wuzi expressed her worries. How can that be? We've asked the experts who guided our cultivation. Although the power of reincarnation is the most mysterious power in heaven and earth, the awakening of 100 lifetimes of reincarnation, it's only the awakening of power. It will definitely not affect you. No, this is different from what the seniors who guided us said. I've awakened not only the power of reincarnation, but also some scenes that do not belong to me at all. There are many. Otherwise, I would be able to trigger the heavenly punishment and step into the heavenly immortal realm now. Helian Wuzi said. As she spoke, her gaze slowly swept across the entire sect ruins. Suddenly, she let out a cry of surprise. What's wrong? Tan Tai Lien and Xia Yuyu frowned and asked. They turned around and followed Helian Wuzi's gaze, but there was nothing unusual. However, Helian Wuzi seemed to have not heard their question. She stared blankly at the sect ruins, rumble. In her mind, the collapsed palace was uprooted from the ground and quickly reassembled. One by one, cultivators dressed in ancient attire, young and old, appeared inside and outside the palace. Some were singing and laughing, and some were sitting cross-legged in cultivation. Every palace exuded an immortal aura that Helian Wuzi had never sensed before in the vast universe galaxy. In the martial arts arena, there were young disciples competing. There were countless youths watching. Experts with white hair and beards who looked like old immortals were holding down the fort. Rumble. Suddenly, the heavens and earth darkened. An extremely terrifying aura of destruction appeared outside the entire sect. It was also at this moment that all the cultivators looked towards the void. Immediately, all the scenes in Helian Wuzi's mind disappeared. It was as if she had entered a starry void. There was no sound, no energy. There was only a young girl whose face could not be seen clearly. She was surrounded by several old men sitting cross-legged in the middle. The faces of the old men could be seen clearly, as if they were telling the young girl something. Suddenly, the old men moved again. Helian Wuzi's eyes widened. What did she see? She saw the stars and the moon. Every old man could take the stars into their hands with a wave of their hands. Reincarnation is immortal. Go, child. After the young girl sitting cross-legged in the middle turned into a bright flowing light and disappeared into the endless void, a gentle and old voice appeared in Helian Wuzi's mind. Although it was a language that Helian Wuzi had never heard before, she clearly understood what the old man was saying. Xiao Wu, Xiao Wu? Helian Wuzi didn't know why, but her beautiful eyes were already filled with sparkling and translucent tears. That intermittent scene was like a memory hidden in her mind. Especially that gentle and old voice at the end, it was more like it was narrating a kind of vicissitudes and solemnity that existed since ancient times. That young girl whose face couldn't be seen clearly made Helian Wuzi feel that she was inextricably linked to herself. Everything was like a movie. She wasn't sad, but from the depths of her heart, it was as if she was infected by the subconscious sadness. What exactly happened? Xiao Wu, what happened? What did you see? Why are you crying? Xia Yuyu and Tan Tai Lian asked. Although the two of them did not see anything abnormal at all, and only Helian Wuzi was abnormal at this moment, the two of them knew that something must have happened to Helian Wuzi. I don't know. All the illusions disappeared. In front of her was still the broken and desolate sect ruins that were filled with an ancient aura. Helian Wuzi, who felt like she was in a dream, still had tears in her eyes as she murmured. During this period of time, her mind was restless. The power of reincarnation was crazily awakening. She had encountered countless similar scenes, but they had never been so real. Although the scenes today were still intermittent, they were relatively complete, especially the young girl, the old man, and the last voice that appeared at the end. Xiao Wu, don't worry. The power of reincarnation will definitely not let you become another person. Although we don't know what the power of reincarnation is, in 100 reincarnations, every life is a new beginning, and it is also you. Perhaps there will be some deep memories that will be awakened with the power of reincarnation. Just like the absolute art that you awakened, it will be passed on to you. But those are all memories of the past, aren't they? Don't be afraid. Tan Tai Lian held Huyen's cold little hand tightly and comforted her. Yes, Xiao Wu, don't be afraid. Xia Yuyu also said. Although the two of them did not know what Helian Wuzi saw or sensed, they knew that she must have been affected by the power of reincarnation. Xiao Lian, I want to walk around here. Helian Wuzi heard the two of them and regained a trace of calmness. Before coming, the flying device's AI had already told her the situation here in advance. She knew that Chen Hao and the others had already been transported into a training space. They just had to wait here. We'll accompany you. No need, I want to walk around by myself. Hiss. After Helian Wuzi finished speaking, her figure flashed and turned into a stream of light, walking towards the barren and broken ruins. Although all the illusions had disappeared at this moment, they still appeared vividly in her mind. She landed in front of a collapsed palace and seemed to subconsciously search for something. When she found a rusty plaque in the ruins of the palace, she waved her hand and released a gentle energy to clear the stains and dust on it. Then, she saw 5 ancient characters that she didn't recognize at all. She had never heard of them before. But it was these 5 words that made Helian Wuzi widen her eyes in a daze. Under the control of her subconscious, Tears once again flowed uncontrollably. Chapter 699. Why? Hellion Woozy stared at the 5 ancient characters on the plaque. Her voice trembled as she muttered to herself. She didn't recognize them, and she was sure that she had never really seen these 5 ancient characters that had been buried in the dust for who knew how many years. However, the image that had just appeared in her mind was like an illusion, and she clearly saw the original appearance of the palace in front of her in the past. On the plaque, there were these 5 characters. Is there really a past and present life? Is this world and this sect really related to me? Hellion Woozy was certain that all of this was because she had awakened the power of reincarnation. She wanted to understand what was going on, but other than the images that appeared in her subconscious mind, as well as the sadness that made her cry uncontrollably, she was unable to obtain any other information. She flipped through the ruins one after another and found broken and decayed plaques one after another. She saw ancient words that were exactly the same as the scene that had just appeared in her mind. This made her understand that the scene that had just appeared in her mind was definitely not an illusion, but something that had truly existed. Little Wu, what's going on? When Hellion Woozy returned to Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lien's side in a daze, Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lien asked a little worriedly. Just now, although they didn't accompany Hellion Woozy, they looked at her from afar. Hellion Woozy's appearance made them faintly worried. I saw many scenes, the scenes of the sect ruins in the past when they were still intact. The names of each collapsed palace were not wrong. I saw before the universe collapsed, a few old men used the great magical power of picking the stars and catching the moon to do something to a girl. They said, reincarnation is eternal, go, child, this. When Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lien heard Hellion Woozy's words, they were stunned speechless. Because of Hellion Woozy, they also had some understanding of 100 reincarnations. This was a kind of mysterious power that was similar to a bloodline inheritance, but also superior to a bloodline inheritance. Any cultivator who could awaken the power of reincarnation contained the terrifying energy accumulated from 100 reincarnations. As one's realm increased, this energy would gradually awaken and become one's own use. At the same time, it would be accompanied by the awakening of a unique inheritance. However, under normal circumstances, it wouldn't involve any memories of past experiences. Eternal reincarnation. Do you think I'm that girl? In that case, would I still be me? Hellion Woozy asked apprehensively. Even though she knew that Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lien wouldn't give her an answer, if she didn't say it now, she would feel very sad, very worried, and very afraid. She wanted to pour her heart out. That won't happen. Xiaowu, don't worry so much. You have to know that this universe has been destroyed for an unknown number of years. Tens of millions of years, or even billions of years. How many reincarnations would that take? If you were her, you would have already completely awakened. Xia Yuyu said. That's right. Perhaps it's the influence of the remnant aura of the ancient sect. Your physique is more suitable for this place, causing the scenes of the past to appear in your mind. The most likely reason is that your physique is similar to that girl's, said Tantai Lien. Perhaps, don't think too much. Hellion Woozy sat down cross-legged. Although what the two of them said made sense, she knew that her situation wasn't that simple. After the 3 of them chatted for a while, they entered a state of cultivation. However, in less than 2 hours, Tantai Lien and Xiaoyu suddenly sensed an extremely strong energy fluctuation, which made the 2 of them open their eyes in astonishment. Immediately, they also saw the astonished Hellion Woozy. The 3 of them were actually wrapped up in layers upon layers of mysterious runes. The area of 300 meters around them became extremely resplendent 7-colored rays of light. Moreover, the fluctuation became more and more intense. What's going on? Did the restriction open? Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lien asked in surprise. The place where they sat cross-legged to cultivate was the core of the 9 layers of restriction that Chen Hao and the others had activated before they entered the sacred training ground. However, when they arrived, it had already closed. But now, such a strong fluctuation actually gushed out, and the 2 of them instantly sensed that the source was Hellion Woozy. That's not right. According to Xiaoji's information, a space-time door was opened here before. It was a sacred training ground that was transmitted to this universe. How could it be opened again? Could it be that they're coming back? Come with me. We can go in. Heli and Wuzi didn't have time to answer the two of them and directly urged them. This. Although Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian didn't understand what was going on, they hastily rushed to Heli and Wuzi's side. The moment the three of them grabbed her, a seven-colored pillar of light suddenly enveloped the three of them. The space distorted, and they disappeared from the sect's ruins. Rumble. At the same time, the entire space of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions suddenly shook violently. The energy of heaven and earth roared, and the heavenly Tao reversed. Terrifying thunderbolts filled the entire space of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions. Violent winds and torrential rain, mountains collapsed, and the earth cracked. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. How can it be? Someone just broke through the 3rd restriction. How can the 4th one be here? All the cultivators, no matter where they were, no matter what they were doing at this moment, restrained their auras to avoid the terrifying shaking of heaven and earth. No one would have thought that in 2 years, only a few cultivators had broken through the 3rd restriction. Most people hadn't even comprehended the 2nd restriction, let alone the 3rd one. However, at this moment, the terrifying shaking of heaven and earth and the changes in the heavenly Tao's laws were enough to prove that someone had broken through the 4th restriction. In the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions, once someone broke through a restriction, it would cause the entire space to shake and the heavenly Tao's laws would change, and the 2nd restriction would open. Rumble. What no one expected was that as soon as the shaking of heaven and earth ended, the heavenly Tao's laws changed again. Shockingly, someone had comprehended the 5th restriction. However, this was still not the end. When the 9th restriction was completely opened, the space of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions became one, and there were no more barriers. All the cultivators stared blankly at the sky. They didn't dare to believe this was real. In theory, this shouldn't happen no matter what. It was simply impossible for it to happen. No matter how high one's comprehension was, no matter how talented one was, there was no way one could completely comprehend the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions in such a short time. After all, one had to comprehend and break through the restrictions one by one. How could one break through consecutively? However, this was the reality. Everyone sensed the changes in the heavenly Tao's laws. Apart from shock, they also felt an indescribable sense of panic. Who could be so powerful? When the 4th restriction was broken. Flying immortals. Immortals, 3 immortals. What? While all the cultivators in the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions were immersed in shock, Chen Hao and many of the other cultivators who had been teleported in saw an unbelievable scene. In the 9 heavens, amid the terrifying lightning, a rainbow-colored light streaked across the sky like a shooting star. 3 dreamlike figures could be vaguely seen. They were wrapped in the rainbow-colored light, and it was as if immortals had descended from the 9 heavens. One of the figures was sitting cross-legged, and the other 2 were gazing at her from the side. Soon, they were heading toward the depths of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions. They've broken through the 4th restriction of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions. The nearby cultivators who saw the strange phenomenon in the sky were extremely shocked. Just from the lightning surrounding the 3 girls in the 9 heavens, they were certain that one of the 3 had broken through the 4th restriction. When the 4th restriction was broken, Chen Hao and the others, who were sitting cross-legged and cultivating in a cave abode on a mountain peak, rushed out of the cave abode and stared at the void. Even Chen Hao was extremely shocked at this moment. He had not been the first to break through any of the first 3 restrictions. Although he had comprehended it not long after the others had broken through, he had not been the first to break through. This was a situation that Chen Hao had never encountered before. One had to know that his comprehension ability was quite impressive, and it was also one of the aspects that he was most confident in. However, in front of the geniuses of the 10 major galaxies, he had lost his previous advantage, which also made him feel pressured. At this moment, he had not even fully comprehended the 3rd restriction, but the fourth restriction had been broken first. The 9 celestial ceiling restrictions had 9 layers of space. If the first restriction was broken through, the space before that restriction would be merged into one, and the heavenly Tao's laws would change. However, this did not mean that every cultivator only broke through the space barrier. Whether the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions had restrictions, and how many restrictions there were, still depended on the individual's breakthrough. This is too fast. Someone was the first to break through the third restriction 3 days ago, and now he has broken through the fourth restriction. It must be the same person. How could it be so fast? Long Ting said in surprise. I'm afraid the geniuses of the 10 major galaxies are far beyond our expectations. Chen Shui stared at the changing wind and clouds, frowned slightly and said softly. As she spoke, she looked at Chen Hao, who also had a solemn expression on his face. She knew very well that Chen Hao, who had never lost to anyone in any aspect, must have more than she had thought. The 9 celestial ceiling restrictions have no advantage for the human clan. You don't have to worry about anything. The top experts of the human clan are the strongest in the 10 major galaxies. The higher the realm, the stronger the advantage of the human clan. Venerable Han Mei said softly. Although her and Venerable Yun Wei's cultivation was almost at the bottom of the group, their mentality was the best. They were afraid that Chen Hao and the others would be shocked, so they comforted them. To rumble? Ah? Suddenly, a dazzling 7-colored light surrounded by lightning appeared in the sky above Chen Hao and the others. It was as fast as a shooting star, but 3 dreamlike figures could be vaguely seen. Surrounded by lightning and turbulent core, they have comprehended the fourth restriction. Why do I feel a little familiar? Chen Shui said in surprise. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 700. It's Xiaolian. And Xiaowu and Yuyu. Chen Hao's heart skipped a beat. Although he was about to break through the third restriction of the 9 restrictions of immortal ceiling, the increase in his perception was limited. He could only see the silhouettes of the 3 dreamy figures wrapped in colorful light and thousands of thunderbolts. He could not see them clearly at all. Not to mention him, even Chen Shui, who had awakened her ability to perceive, couldn't sense the slightest bit. She only felt that the 3 hazy figures were somewhat familiar, but Chen Hao instantly determined the identities of the 3 people. It was because of the Phoenix inheritance. Bam! Chen Hao stomped his foot and immediately rose up like a cannonball. His powerful physical strength created a huge pit in the hard rock ground, sending gravel flying. At the same time, he sent out messages to summon the Phoenix in his mind, trying to stop Tantai Lien and the others. But no matter how fast he was, no matter how hard he tried to summon them, there was no effect at all. The 3 people who were like shooting stars streaking across the 9 heavens didn't seem to know of his existence at all. They still maintained the same posture and instantly disappeared into the distance. After that, just like the other cultivators, Chen Hao was shocked by the continuous and successive tremors of the heavens and the earth. What was going on? Helian Wuzi, Xia Yuyu, and Tantai Lien should not have made it to the gate of time and space. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to appear here. However, they had appeared. It would be fine if they just appeared, but why were they wrapped in the Thunder Dao Law and entered so quickly as if they were immortals and broke through the 9 restrictions of immortal ceiling? How? Are you sure it's Xiaolian and the others? At this moment, Chen Shui and the others rushed to Chen Hao's side and asked. The aura of the Phoenix inheritance can't be wrong. Xiaolian can confirm it. Although she can't see clearly, the other 2 are Xiaowu and Yuyu. According to Xiaoji's calculations, if they hurry, they should have met up about now. Chen Hao said. How could they come in? And they must have broken through the 9 restrictions of immortal ceiling. Is that possible? Long Ting stared at the still shaking void and asked in confusion. Chen Hao looked at everyone and asked, do you feel the aura of the 7-colored light and the law of lightning? They clearly passed by us, but they don't seem to be in the same world. It feels like the aura of a space-time door? It seems so. I also sense the aura of the space-time gate. The one sitting cross-legged should be Xiao Wu. Could it be related to Xiao Wu's reincarnation power? It shouldn't be. Although the power of samsara is profound, it shouldn't be able to continuously break through the 9 restrictions. Chen Shui frowned as she pondered. Chen Hao also thought of this possibility, but like Chen Shui, he rejected it. Everyone discussed for a while, but to no avail. This was completely beyond their understanding. If Chen Hao could communicate with the old god, he might be able to deduce what was going on. Unfortunately, even though he was close to breaking through the 3rd hex and possessed a certain amount of mana and telekinesis, he was still unable to communicate with the old god. He could only give up and put the matter aside for now. Either way, it was still good news to know that the 3 of them had made it to the core of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world. At the end of the gray space, specks of blue will, the wisps appeared. A well-preserved group of ancient palaces could be vaguely seen. The palaces and pavilions were carved with dragons and phoenixes, and the profound aura of the heavenly Tao filled the air. From afar, many cultivators could be seen flying in. "We're here." At this moment, apart from Chen Hao, who was still relatively calm, Chen Shui, Long Ting, and the others all took a deep breath. Their expressions were solemn, and their fighting spirit surged. They had already experienced such a scene twice. Every time someone broke through the first layer of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world, a huge group of palaces would be opened in front of them. To be precise, it should be an ancient city. According to everyone's estimation, this should be a ring-shaped city. Cultivators from all directions could enter as long as they went deep. Of course, the prerequisite was that someone had broken through the 9 restrictions of the city. Otherwise, they would be sealed by a powerful barrier and unable to enter. Such a situation was like a myriad of streams converging, gathering layer by layer. When they reached the last layer of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world, all the cultivators who had entered would probably gather there. A fierce battle was inevitable. On the first and second layers, the situation was still fine because it was too large. The cultivators they encountered were basically human. Although they had a few conflicts with ignorant fellows, they could easily deal with them. Although they had heard that some people had encountered foreign races, Chen Hao and the others did not encounter them. This is the 3rd layer. Conflicts are inevitable. We might encounter foreign races. Everyone be careful, Chen Hao said. The previous 2 situations had already made everyone clear that the situation of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world was very different from the situation recorded in the information. After a long time in the wilderness, although many powerful demon beasts and spiritual items of heaven and earth had been born, the true treasure land was still in the palaces on each layer. All kinds of ancient treasures, secret manuals, pills, and so on were spread throughout every palace. It was as if this holy land of training had become one of the inheritance points deliberately left behind before the collapse of the universe. In order to obtain it, besides one's own talent, one needed great strength to deter others. Big Brother Chen Hao, none of us have fully comprehended the 3rd restriction. I'm afraid we can't enter any of the palaces. Is it appropriate for us to go now? Fan Dongxing said. It's fine. We haven't comprehended it, and the others haven't either. Let's seize the territory first. The comprehension of the heavenly Tao in the city is deeper and faster, but we have too few people. It's still very troublesome. Last time, we relied on you and Little Ting to deter others. This time, it'll be even more difficult. Look at those groups that entered. There were at least 30 or 40 people. Chen Shui frowned and said, "You haven't fully comprehended the 3rd restriction, so we can't enter the palaces. It's fine if you're alone, but I'm afraid we'll have problems." This was indeed a problem. No matter how strong a person was, in the absence of a powerful true essence and psyche power, the limitation of pure physical strength was still very great. In the face of the temptation of ancient treasures and secret manuals, even the internal conflicts of the human race were quite tragic, let alone the foreign races. If they could quickly break into the palaces and enter, they wouldn't have to worry about being surrounded. But if they couldn't enter, Chen Hao could ensure his own safety, but he couldn't protect everyone present. This didn't mean they were weak, but that they had too few people. It was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. Once they fell into a chaotic battle, they would inevitably lose sight of one. Why don't we do this? Little Ting and I will go in and seize a large palace first. You two can cultivate in the periphery of the palace complex. It won't be long before I can open it. At that time, Little Ting will take you two over. Chen Hao pondered for a moment and thought of a compromise. Everyone felt that this was safer. They didn't have to worry about Chen Hao and Long Ting. Chen Hao's body would automatically evolve to the peak strength of the 9 restrictions of Immortal Ceiling. Just by relying on this, he didn't have to fear being surrounded. Long Ting, who had comprehended the second restriction, always had the advantage in terms of physical strength. Although she wasn't as freakish as Chen Hao, she was still extremely powerful among the human race. If she couldn't win, she could run. An hour later, everyone arrived in front of an ancient city that stretched as far as the eye could see. Majestic ancient energy and fragments of the heavenly Tao filled the void. The palaces that shone with a faint blue light like the wisps were even more mysterious and profound. It felt as if they had walked into the graveyard of the ancient gods. To be precise, this was equivalent to the graveyard of the ancient gods. When the universe collapsed, all life in this universe, no matter how strong they were, couldn't survive. But they could rely on their powerful abilities to leave behind their indestructible wills and heavenly Tao laws. In the city, every palace could be considered the graveyard of an ancient almighty. In the first 2 levels, Chen Hao and the others had entered many palaces. Even the worst palace was left behind by at least a heavenly immortal expert. Moreover, the heavenly immortals of this world were far more powerful than the heavenly immortals of the vast universe galaxy. Look, the leader is Chen Hao. The largest palace we saw on the previous level was the one they obtained. Oh? He defeated Lu Fengnan's team? I can't see how strong he is. That's because you didn't see him. Lu Fengnan's team of 100 was brutally ravaged. At that time, Chen Hao was fierce. He went deep into the crowd alone and captured Lu Fengnan. He forced Lu Fengnan's team to retreat and occupied the palace. It's best if we don't provoke this person. Don't look at how there are only 9 of them. 4 of them are genius female disciples of the temple, and the other 2 are young men and women. They are both top geniuses of East Flow City and will definitely become temple disciples. As for that Chen Hao, although he isn't a temple disciple, his strength is terrifying to the extreme. It is said that when they were at the transmission point of their sect ruins, even Chen Lin was sent running away by him. Is that so? Then I think there will be a good show to watch. Just because we don't provoke them doesn't mean others will be afraid. They can at most be considered the strongest at your transmission point, but they definitely can't compare with ours. Our transmission point has Chen Lin and Moling treading snow together, forming a team of 300 people. No one dares to provoke them. Do you know who broke through the second of the 9 immortal ceiling taboos first? Moling treading snow. Even now, he still hasn't made a move. But the strength of his aura is absolutely far more terrifying than Chen Hao's. We'll definitely meet him in this area. Let's wait for a good show. As for the strongest palace in the core area, there's no need for us to think about it. It will definitely be occupied by Moling treading snow. There's nothing we can do. When we encounter these freaks, we can only give way. This is only the 3rd level, and the foreign races came all the way here just to show off. But after another 2 or 3 levels, we'll automatically meet them. At that time, it will be even more cruel. Let's wait here for a few more days. Let's gather our teams and increase our strength first. Let's look at the situation. If things really don't work out, we might as well join Moling treading snow's team. Don't. If we stay with them, we'll just be drinking soup. As long as it isn't a life or death situation, we absolutely cannot stay with them. After Chen Hao and the others entered the city through the wide city gates, they saw a group of over 40 people sitting cross-legged near the city gates. 2 leaders of the temple disciples were discussing in low voices. Chapter 701. Chen Hao realized that compared to the previous 2 forbidden cities, the cultivators in this city were much stronger. He had seen some of them before, but most of them he had never seen before. Moreover, most of the teams had more people. Gathering in groups to display the strength of a team would become more important towards the end. Of course, there were also solo cultivators and Dao companions, but these were the minority. Moreover, only a few of these people dared to enter the core of the city to fight for territory. Let's stay here. When they went deeper and passed by a row of smaller palaces, Chen Shui looked at the few cultivators around her and said, "You guys be careful too. There are even more experts on this level. Our area involves at least 10 armies." Chen Hao and Long Ting responded and went deeper. They knew very well that as they went deeper, the competition in the city's forbidden zones would become more and more intense. The only reason it was still mild now was that they had not really encountered a foreign army. Once the density reached a certain level, it was inevitable that the city's forbidden zones would become fierce battlefields. Ancient palaces were shrouded in dense mist. The sky was gray and the heavenly Dao laws were everywhere. After the 9 immortal sealing restrictions were broken in one breath, the entire area of the 9 immortal sealing restrictions became chaotic. Every level of the city's forbidden zones became the best and quickest place for people to break through and comprehend. There was no doubt that the third forbidden zone was the place with the densest and most complete fragments of the heavenly Dao laws. As long as they completely understood the third restriction, they would be able to form the corresponding runes and open the treasures of any palace. "Brother Hao, it's about time." After going deeper for dozens of kilometers, the two of them had already reached the core of the city. The circular palaces that were arranged in all directions also became more and more magnificent. At this moment, 16 palaces formed a circle, and at the core was the tallest and largest palace that was like a mountain. Long Ting knew that the core palace would be a place that all the teams would fight for. In Long Ting's opinion, it was not very possible for the two of them to snatch it. Yes, let them fight for the core palace for now. Of these 16 palaces, we'll take one first. If anyone dares to open their eyes, I don't mind killing them. Don't just intimidate him. With the command medallion in our possession, every move we make here will be recorded. If we kill our own clansmen without sufficient reason, the Divine Temple will definitely punish us. You've seen it for yourself during the last 2 fights. No matter how unreasonable a person is, they would at most be crippled. Big Brother Hao, I feel more and more that this 9 restrictions of immortal bestowment area is too different from the holy lands of training and tempering in the records. This is like a dead end that forces everyone onto a path of slaughter. In the end, I wonder how many people will be buried here. Yes, this is no longer a pure training ground for the 9 restrictions celestial bestowments. There's no training ground that would gather all the treasures in a single city. Every single palace here is a treasure trove. Moreover, once someone obtains it, the palace will vanish into thin air. Moreover, when you think about the eternal will within the palace, it's not difficult to deduce that these palaces, or perhaps the entire city, were formed by an ancient mighty figure using a great ability. Apart from the primordial spiritual treasures and secret manuals that we obtained that were real, everything else we saw was fake. This is equivalent to selecting an inheritor. So, you're not wrong when you say it's a path of slaughter. If you want to obtain even more formidable magic treasures and secret manuals, then you have to step on ghastly white bones to advance. I've thought of this since a long time ago. I won't take the initiative to start a slaughter, but if someone dares to open their eyes, then I don't mind starting a slaughter first. This is something that will happen sooner or later. The level of ferocity in the end might far exceed our expectations. Chen Hao spoke with a calm expression. Chen Hao had never been afraid when facing competition. After he comprehended his own Dao and returned to his true self, the Dao of nature, Chen Hao clearly understood that the Dao of nature wasn't to have no desires, nor was it to stand aloof from the world. It was to maintain a calm heart of an expert and face everything. It's really cruel. Fighting and killing is too boring. I haven't rested for a long time. Long Ting said. Due to the uniqueness of this girl's cultivation method, the way she grew up was different from the majority of cultivators. Even though she had adapted for a period of time in the Divine Temple, she couldn't change the habits that she had cultivated since she was young. She couldn't stand up when she could sit, and she couldn't sit when she could sleep. Having delicious spirit fruits was better than anything else. But ever since she came to the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, under Chen Hao's coercion, she had no choice but to work hard. This was undoubtedly the most painful thing for her. Fortunately, it was Chen Hao. If it had been anyone else, they probably wouldn't have been able to subdue this girl, but it had to be said that Long Ting's talent and comprehension were extremely heaven-defying. She was only second to Chen Hao among the 9 cultivators when she was forced to do so. If this girl became interested and put in 100% of her effort, she wouldn't pale in comparison to Chen Hao. Moreover, every time she broke through a limit, her physical strength would increase to an extremely terrifying level. Her current combat strength was absolutely not something that Chen Shui, the 2 sisters, and the others could compare to. Otherwise, Chen Hao wouldn't have brought her in alone. It's good that you're used to it. Cultivate in front of this palace. The way to break through the 3rd restriction as soon as possible is the way to go. If you can break through before me, you'll get the biggest share of the pills and spirit fruits this time. Chen Hao tempted with a faint smile. Out of the way! Out of the way! In less than 4 hours after Chen Hao and the others immersed themselves in cultivation, more and more cultivators poured into the city from the huge entrance. It was obvious that after sensing that the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing had been broken one after another, they were all making their way to the 3rd restriction as quickly as possible. Groups of powerful cultivators released their auras. As soon as they entered the city, they demonstrated their strength and dominance. It was normal for cultivators to fight for this place. Those who were weaker could only avoid them even if they were dissatisfied. Brother Moling? Nice to meet you. I didn't expect you to come in as well. The 2 groups, each consisting of 100 people, met at the city gate. In one of the groups, a young man with an imposing appearance and an unruly aura was surrounded by a crowd. After seeing the leader of the other group, a trace of seriousness flashed across his eyes, and he immediately revealed a trace of a rare smile as he called out to the leader of the other group. Moling Takshu's white clothes were purer than snow. His long black hair was scattered behind his back. His figure, which was clearly not very tall and appeared somewhat cultured and refined, was actually emitting a wild and arrogant aura at this moment. Those bright star-like eyes gave one a kind of cold, determined, and fierce feeling, just like a wolf king. Moling Takshu immediately frowned slightly when he heard the other party take the initiative to greet him. He immediately revealed a smile and said, "It is indeed a pleasure to meet you. It seems that there are a few legions in the 3rd restricted area. I just don't know how many legions there are." No matter how many there are, Bai Yan, will fight for the core palace. Bai Yan was one of the top experts in the Earth celestial stage of the Divine Temple and one of the 50 commanders. He was ranked 9th among the disciples in the Earth celestial stage of the Divine Temple, 1 rank higher than Moling Takshu. "Same to you," Moling Takshu said lightly without any hesitation. After that, he ignored them and walked in quickly. Bai Yan's group also strode forward. The battle hadn't started yet, but under the calm appearance, there was a smell of gunpowder. The leaders of both groups were calm and relaxed, but the cultivators under them were staring fiercely at the other group and rubbing their palms. This is going to be interesting. I didn't expect Bai Yan to come too. Commander, is Bai Yan very powerful? Nonsense, he dares to challenge Moling Takshu? How can he not be powerful? In the Earth celestial stage of the Divine Temple, Bai Yan is ranked 9th, 1 rank higher than Moling Takshu. However, this was the ranking before they came. Both of them got their positions by challenging the top 10 experts and didn't fight. It's hard to say who's stronger and who's weaker. If there are no accidents, the core palace here will definitely be obtained by the 2 of them. Even the 16 palaces in the 2nd circle have nothing to do with us. Damn it, after passing this stage, we'd rather spend 10 days to half a month running to a city area further away. As long as we don't encounter foreign tribes, it's still possible for us to get into the 2nd group. This is a fucking group of death. 50 commanders, and now only 2 of the top 10 have appeared. How can they let others? Fuck, it can't be, right? Just as this disciple was complaining gloomily, a group appeared at the city gate, neither too fast nor too slow, causing this guy to widen his eyes and mouth. What a sexy and beautiful woman. Commander, you're drooling, smack. Without any warning, the disciple who was widening his eyes and mouth slapped the back of the young man's head. Fuck, do you want to die? Keep your voice down. At this time, without the commander saying anything, the cultivators beside him were already scared silly. Fuck, that sexy and beautiful woman walked lightly, her beautiful eyes looking around. After she entered the city leisurely, there was a long tail behind her. In an instant, there were already more than 100 people in sight, but it was as if there was no end, and they continued to swarm in continuously. Not to mention how powerful the sexy beauty was, just the number of people in the group was enough to scare people to death. At this moment, everyone was as silent as cicadas in winter. They stared blankly at the group that entered in a single file. They looked at that enchanting and seductive back, then counted the number of people who entered in a single file. When there were about 300 people, they finally reached the end. It was only when the sexy beauties group gradually moved further away and was about to disappear from everyone's sight that they realized that there were actually 30 temple disciples following behind the sexy beauty. It was not their fault that their eyes were not bright. It was just that the sexy beauty was too dazzling, so dazzling that it made all the cultivators within 100 feet of her lose their luster. As long as they looked at that figure, they would ignore everyone else around them. What did I just see? Oh my god. Hu Meinyang. It must be Hu Meinyang. What a powerful and terrifying group. Hu Meinyang. She is Hu Meinyang? Not only were the non-temple disciples shocked, but even the temple disciples were shocked. Chapter 702. Hu Meinyang was only at the Earth's celestial stage, but she was already a legendary figure in the Divine Temple. She was a peerless woman who ranked first in the vast universe galaxy's preliminary test. To most of the Divine Temple's genius disciples, she was rarely seen. Even during the special training before entering the primitive mystic realm, she did not appear. She did not participate in any of the Divine Temple's ranking competitions. Similarly, she did not hold any position in the primitive mystic realm. This was definitely not because she was a loner. It was because she befriended the Divine Temple's top geniuses. In the Divine Temple, when she occasionally appeared, she was usually with the Heaven's celestial stage geniuses. It was rumored that countless top geniuses had fallen for her. Although her combat strength was not on par with the Earth's celestial stage geniuses, no one dared to underestimate her. How could someone who could train with the Heaven's celestial stage geniuses be weak? This Hu Meinyang is indeed a natural seductress. Her peerless charm is unparalleled. Hu Meinyang is not just a natural seductress. It is said that she is the strongest saintess of the Misty Rain Tower in the past 100,000 years. She opened the Misty Rain Tower's ancestral inheritance that no one had opened for nearly 1,000,000 years and learned the lost Red Dust Heart Sutra. It can't be? Isn't the Red Dust Heart Sutra something that can only be cultivated by the innate Taoist embryo? That's why I said she's not just a natural seductress. I see. No wonder the Divine Temple's top geniuses want to befriend her. Whoever gets her will gain immeasurable benefits, not to mention the potential alliance, that's for sure. Other than the top geniuses of the top 10 sects, I'm afraid no one will catch her eye. Not only must they be talented and powerful, but they must also have a powerful background to meet the Misty Rain Tower's standards. In fact, although we can't get in touch with her, the top 10 Earth celestial stage geniuses are often invited by her. Let's go and take a look. I believe Bai Yen and Moling Takshu will not compete with her. At most, they will enter the core palace with her. Even if a legion commander comes, it won't cause any trouble. Let's see if we can join her team. Let's disband our team. Following her will definitely be more rewarding than leading a team alone. Even if the reward is not great, it's a pleasure to be able to see this peerless genius. That was exactly what he was thinking. No matter what, we are disciples of the Divine Temple. How can we not compare to the ordinary cultivators in their team? Let's go. Hu Meinyang's appearance caused an uproar among the surrounding cultivators. Some of the disciples of the temple chose to follow her, while others felt that no matter what, they had to leave this place. This was definitely a group of death. Following such a group of ferocious people would only bring them soup. Of course, most of these people were the stronger cultivators of the temple. Their strength was average, and they were just there to buy soy sauce wherever they went, so they had an indifferent attitude. Following such experts was not a bad thing. Most importantly, when they encountered the foreign army later on, they could also seek some protection. After going through the first 2 stages, everyone realized that this was a path of killing and seizing treasures. Even though they knew it was dangerous, it was hard to stop them. Even if they wanted to drink soup, they had to rush to the end to take a look. At least, it was better than staying where they were. When Hu Mainyang passed by the area where Chen Shui and the sisters were, it also caused Chen Shui and the others to be shocked. It was not because of Hu Mainyang's peerless beauty. She came from the Misty Rain Tower, was born with a natural charm, and cultivated the Red Dust Heart Sutra that only the founder of the Misty Rain Tower could cultivate. Her true body was definitely a beauty that could bring disaster to a country. However, in the eyes of Chen Shui and the other women, it was completely different from in the eyes of men. Especially for a peerless beauty like Chen Shui, at most, it was a sign of surprise. But in the eyes of men, it was very different. Chen Shui and the others were only surprised by the size of the team. It was not yet time to fight with the foreign army. How could such a large team be formed? But soon, Chen Shui and the other cultivators who were surprised by the size of the team discovered that most of the cultivators walking behind Hu Mainyang were following her on their own accord. This was because many disciples from the Holy Temple were red in the face. They walked to Hu Mainyang's side and recommended themselves with trembling voices. However, they were all rejected with a smile. What was even more surprising was that even if they were rejected, they did not leave and continued to follow behind Hu Mainyang. What made them even more speechless was that they were fighting for the position behind Hu Mainyang. The power of the Red Dust Heart Sutra and the Red Dust Heart Sutra was obvious. If not for the fact that everyone knew that this was not a seduction technique to confuse people's hearts, they would have avoided her from afar. This would not affect anyone's Tao heart, but it could subtly conquer your heart. Even if they knew the result, they would still follow her and gladly endure it. Strange, after a brief moment of shock, Chen Shui looked at Hu Mainyang again. Hu Mainyang moved gracefully but was not slow at all. After taking a closer look and sensing her, Chen Shui frowned slightly. Sister Shui, are these people's minds bewitched? It feels strange. Leng Ninglu asked softly when she saw Chen Shui frowning at the woman. However, Chen Shui did not seem to hear her. Sister Shui. Yes. You guys stay here. I'll go take a look. Chen Shui came back to her senses. Her figure flashed, and she quickly turned to the blind spot between the 2 palaces. A mysterious aura fluctuation flashed around her body, and her graceful and exquisite figure underwent a shocking change. Her blue dress casually pulled at her waist and chest a few times, and it turned into a blue Taoist robe. At the same time, a blue silk scarf appeared in her hand, and she tied up her hair. Little Shui, what are you doing? Venerable Immortal Han Mei followed behind her and asked. Mother, she has the Red Dust Heart Sutra and cultivated a powerful seduction technique. Don't worry, I won't do anything rash. Chen Shui lowered her voice and said, Are you sure? I'm sure. That aura can't be wrong. Venerable Immortal Han Mei frowned when she heard Chen Shui's words. Her heart felt as if it was being cut by a knife, and her eyes were instantly filled with tears. Unfortunately, she was clearly very sad, but she did not know why she was sad. She had personally extracted a memory from the past and condensed it into a soul crystal. That was the most painful memory, a memory that pierced through the heart. Even though it had been extracted from her soul and should have been free of it, at this moment, when she wanted to capture something, it inexplicably affected her. Mother. When Chen Shui saw her mother become like this, tears immediately appeared in her eyes and she grabbed her mother's hand. Mother is fine. If it wasn't for the fact that I wanted to live a few more years and was afraid of losing too much cultivation, I should have erased all memories related to him. Mother, I didn't understand before, but now I understand. When you condensed a soul crystal, Hao had already given it to him. He saw it, so why was he so heartless and not looking for you? The past that even Chen Shui had almost forgotten or was unwilling to recall once again made Chen Shui feel intense hatred and dissatisfaction towards the father she had never met before. Especially when she thought that everything that happened to her and the other girls might have been arranged by that heartless father, she felt even more hatred. Don't blame him. After all, he is your father. Moreover, the soul crystal I condensed back then shattered my memories. I only wanted to tell him that we would never meet again. If he dares to treat me like that, then I dare. Venerable Han Mei's eyes flashed with a fierceness that Chen Shui had never seen before. However, when she spoke until here, her face suddenly turned pale and cold sweat dripped down. Even her voice became extremely weak, but she still insisted, "Mother only has one request for you. Find a way to let Chen Hao subdue that innate Tao embryo." Why do you want to do this? Mother doesn't know. In short, subduing him is helping Mother. Venerable Han Mei endured the intense pain from the depths of her soul and said. Just a few words almost caused her soul to collapse. Mother, don't ask Mother. There are many things that Mother can't say and don't know. I know you will doubt Mother's identity and Mother will doubt myself. Most of the time, it is the subconscious that controls everything. But you have to believe that Mother is right. Venerable Han Mei said strenuously. Her eyes even became pleading. Chen Shui looked at her mother's painful appearance and pleading eyes. At this moment, the hatred towards father suddenly disappeared. What was left was only confusion. Everything in front of her seemed to become illusory. Her mother was clearly in front of her, but it seemed to be very far away. She wanted to see clearly, but it was like looking at flowers in the fog. In her heart, it was as if a huge heavy mountain was pressing down on her, making her feel that it was unbearably heavy. Promise, Mother, okay? Venerable Han Mei's weak voice sounded absent-minded. Chen Shui nodded a little numbly. She immediately threw everything aside and turned away. Of all virtues, filial piety was the most important. She had heard about the innate Tao embryo from her mother because it was related to her. She was nurtured by her mother through heaven-defying means for 162 years. But now, she still couldn't be compared to the innate Tao embryo. Only when she surpassed the heavenly immortal realm and stepped into the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland could she become a true innate Tao embryo. The innate Tao embryo resonated with the myriad Tao and was doted on by the myriad Tao. If it was a true innate Tao embryo, the cultivation speed and talent would undoubtedly increase by leaps and bounds. However, this kind of person didn't pursue speed. Instead, they always suppressed their own realm and purposely gave themselves more time to cultivate a solid state of mind. This would lay the foundation for them to reach a higher realm after stepping into the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. As for Chen Shui, who was nurtured by heaven-defying means and could only become a true innate Tao embryo in the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland, she wouldn't lose her innate talent. On the contrary, her state of mind would be better. When she sensed the aura of Hu Mainyang's innate Tao embryo, she wanted to go over and take a look. She knew how terrifying the innate Tao embryo was. Especially Hu Mainyang, who was identified by Chen Shui as a woman who cultivated a peerless seduction technique. She was even more terrifying. She was worried that Chen Hao would be bewitched like those cultivators who followed her. Similarly, even if Chen Hao wasn't bewitched, she was worried that Chen Hao's personality would conflict with hers. Moreover, not long ago, she saw Chen Lin following another expert like an underling, walking towards the core area. Chen Shui didn't know this fake disciple of the Divine Temple, but she heard the discussions of other cultivators. She knew that the master was called Moling Takshu, one of the top 10 earth immortals in the Divine Temple. She naturally knew that Moling Takshu was the commander of their army. She also heard from Long Ting that it was the sect that Bailey Ningbing belonged to. However, even so, she didn't go over. She was afraid of causing trouble and believed that Chen Hao could handle it. But now, with the appearance of the innate Tao embryo, Chen Shui had no choice but to go. However, she didn't expect her mother to give her such a mission. Chapter 703. Chen Shui was depressed and confused. Although she had promised her mother, she did not know what to do at this moment. Let her man conquer a woman? For any woman, this was an extremely painful thing. More importantly, her mother just now was unfamiliar to her. Chen Shui did not know what kind of secret was hidden in that flash of a sharp gaze that she had never seen before. Her mother, her father whom she had never met, and her mother's twin sister, what kind of existence were they? What did they have to do with each other? What kind of existence was Hu Mainyang, with her innate Taoist fetus? What was the relationship between her mother and the others? Chen Shui could not figure it out and could not understand. She felt vaguely uneasy. She had promised her mother, but what should she do? If she did, would it be right or wrong? Sigh. Suddenly, a heavy sigh sounded in Chen Shui's mind. Who is it? Chen Shui, who had just bypassed the palace, stopped abruptly and stood rooted to the ground. All of his consciousness was sucked into his mind by a mysterious force. Don't be nervous, it's me. Senior? Hearing the other person's reply, Chen Shui immediately recognized the familiar voice. It was the mysterious senior who had occasionally appeared to guide her during the years she was under house arrest. In your mind, it's just a wisp of my primordial spirit. You. Chen Shui looked at the gradually clear image of this senior in her mind and was speechless. She had seen him many times, but she had never seen his face. Now she finally saw it clearly. She had thought that they would meet one day, but she did not expect to meet him like this. My daughter. Don't blame your father, you will understand in the future. Following Chen Hai's words, Chen Shui's mind was shrouded in a dazzling and mysterious light. There was a brief moment of blankness. Everything that had just happened with her mother did not leave any trace in Chen Shui's mind. Only a moment later, Chen Shui suddenly sobered up. It was as if her mind had suddenly wandered and she had forgotten what she was thinking. Chen Shui shook her head. Holding on to her initial worries and thoughts about Chen Hao, she unhurriedly followed Hu Mainyang and the huge group that followed behind her. Chen Lin? Moling Takshu? Chen Hao sat cross-legged in front of one of the 16 massive palaces around the core palace. His entire being seemed to have become one with the world as he continued to comprehend the final stages of the third hex. Long Ting, who was guarding him, sat cross-legged beside him leisurely. The sound of footsteps attracted her attention. What Long Ting did not expect was to see Chen Lin and Moling Takshu, who had once helped Bailey Ningbing snatch the sacred artifact from her. Not good, Long Ting frowned slightly. If it were anyone else, it would be fine, but these two were enemies on a narrow road. Not to mention Moling Takshu, even Chen Lin, who had been humiliated by Chen Hao, would probably have to rely on his current power to get back at him. It's them? Sure enough, in just an instant, Chen Hao and Long Ting entered everyone's line of sight. It couldn't be helped. So far, only Chen Hao and Long Ting had occupied one of the entrances of the core palace and the 16 second palaces. It was truly eye-catching. When Chen Lin saw the two of them, he also revealed a trace of surprise. Then, his eyes flashed with sharpness and viciousness. He turned his head and whispered a few words to Moling Takshu, who was walking in the middle. He was calm and collected, as if he did not care about anything. He only stared at Moling Takshu, who was the largest palace in the core, and frowned slightly. Then he looked at Long Ting and Chen Hao. In the end, his gaze locked onto Chen Hao, who was cultivating. After a full 2 seconds, he gave an order and no longer paid attention to him. Chen Lin snorted coldly in the direction of Long Ting and Chen Hao. His eyes were contemptuous. He turned his head and did not say anything for the time being. His expression showed that he did not take Chen Hao and Long Ting seriously at all. Brother Moling, how about we decide the victor in one battle? The winner will obtain the core palace and 8 of the 16 palaces. Whoever comes later will work together. I don't think anyone will dare to fight for it. Bai Yen stood with his hands behind his back. He stopped and said with a confident smile. The two sides, with Bai Yen and Moling Takshu in the lead, formed a situation where they faced each other on the left and right. At this moment, without waiting for Moling Takshu to reply, a dense crowd appeared at the back of the huge main road. No one knew who was the first to discover it and cried out in surprise. Then, everyone sucked in a cold breath and looked behind. Even Moling Takshu and Bai Yen were no exception. Their expressions changed instantly. This scene was extremely strange. They were thousands of meters away. Under the 9 seals of immortality, although their senses were poor, there was no reason for them not to be able to sense any movement. They only discovered it now because the dense crowd behind them was too quiet. No one made a sound. They clustered around a sexy and graceful figure, advancing slowly. There were only small and light footsteps. Hu Meinyang? Moling Takshu and Bai Yen frowned at first, then their brows relaxed. Their eyes shone with a bright light at the same time. They stared blankly at Hu Meinyang, who was leisurely approaching like an immortal and made the world lose its color. The two groups that had been aggressive just now all widened their eyes at this moment. They stared straight at the huge group behind them. Although the vast majority of people did not know who had come, no one was not shocked by Hu Meinyang's figure. Of course, the vast majority of people were even more shocked by the huge group behind Hu Meinyang. Then, as Hu Meinyang approached, everyone's gazes were attracted. No matter if it was young men, middle-aged men, or even the elderly, they all stared blankly at Hu Meinyang. It was as if Hu Meinyang's smiling figure was the only thing left in the world. What happened? Long Ting, who was at the innermost corner, was also shocked by the strange appearance of Moling Takshu and the others. Could it be that someone even more powerful has come? Long Ting thought to herself. She looked at Chen Hao, who was still immersed in comprehension, and shook her head. She could sense that Chen Hao had completely integrated into the law of heaven. She believed that in a few days, he would be able to break through the 3rd hex and open the palace. She also did not encounter any strong competition. However, the situation this time was far beyond Long Ting's expectations. However, Long Ting felt strange in her heart. She had not seen the person who had come, so there was no doubt that it was a powerhouse. Otherwise, Moling Takshu and Bai Yen would not have such expressions. However, everyone was either dazed or silent. It was too strange. Miss Hu, I didn't expect to meet you here. Bai Yen took a step forward to welcome her. His expression, eyes, and tone seemed to have changed in an instant. There was undisguised excitement and adoration in his eyes. Miss Hu, it's a pleasure to meet you. Moling Takshu frowned and glanced at Bai Yen. She also smiled and went forward to welcome her, not to be outdone. Both of them were young geniuses in the top 10 of the Earth's celestial stage and knew Hu Meinyang. They had been won over by Hu Meinyang long ago and had endless fantasies about her. Brother Bai, Brother Moling, nice to meet you. Hu Meinyang smiled and glanced at the two of them with her bright eyes. Miss Hu, these people are. Bai Yen looked at the countless young cultivators behind Hu Meinyang and asked. Meinyang is alone. They want to follow me. Hu Meinyang smiled slightly. Her voice was obviously charming, but it gave people a feeling of emptiness. It was very pleasant to the ears. Hearing Hu Meinyang's words, Moling Takshu and Bai Yen were relieved at the same time. That's easy. Miss Hu, when I win the ownership of the core palace, I will invite Miss Hu together. Moling Takshu said first. Humph. Do you have that ability? Bai Yen frowned and looked at Moling Takshu provocatively. Then he looked at Hu Meinyang and said, Miss Hu, as long as you like it, the core palace and the 16 halls are all yours. I believe that none of the friends here have any objections, right? I, Bai Yen, will be the first to protect you, Miss Hu. Moling Takshu was so angry at Bai Yen that she vomited blood. Brother Bai, you're too serious. Meinyang only needs to enter the core palace. Since both of you are allowing Meinyang to enter, then Meinyang will go first. No one expected Hu Meinyang to say this. After she finished speaking, she cupped her fists slightly at Moling Takshu and Bai Yen. Then she walked toward the core palace with light steps that seemed slow but was actually fast. Before she arrived, Hu Meinyang's body suddenly shone with a tricolored light. In an instant, the surrounding heavenly Tao law and the energy of heaven and earth fluctuated violently. In an instant, a tricolored pillar of light shrouded the door of the core palace. Rumble. The door opened with a rumble. Hu Mainyang entered directly and disappeared in a flash. It's open. Go in. No one expected Hu Mainyang, who had just arrived, to have already comprehended the third hex and opened the door directly. At this moment, the cultivators who had been following Hu Mainyang wanted to follow her without hesitation. All of you stop right there. If you don't want to die, scram. Moling Takshu and Bai Yen shouted almost at the same time. They were shocked by Hu Mainyang's terror. However, if they allowed everyone to enter at this time, what would happen? There was no need for discussion. The two of them agreed without prior consultation. The members of their team also tried to surround and stop them. However, although no one provoked them verbally, the huge crowd attacked directly. The law could not punish the masses. Moreover, Moling Takshu and Bai Yen were not the law. How could they stop hundreds of thousands of people? You're courting death. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, a chaotic battle broke out. However, there were too many people rioting. How could they stop them? In an instant, the door of the core palace was crushed. Countless people rushed in. Although Moling Takshu and Bai Yen were enraged, it was already impossible for them to obtain the core treasure by themselves now. Don't stop them. Charge in. Almost at the same time, the two of them gave the order and rushed into the palace in a flash. The treasures that appeared on the second floor of the core palace were ancient supreme-grade spirit treasures. If there were no surprises, there should be a primordial divine artifact treasure on this floor. How could they give it up? Chapter 704. Long Ting was dumbfounded. She did not expect a woman to have such a terrifying influence. She had even comprehended the third hex. This Hu Mainyang is not simple. Little Shui, why are you here? Long Ting asked Chen Shui. When Hu Mainyang appeared, Chen Shui had quietly come to their side. She only paid attention to the situation and did not say anything. What's going on? The loud shouts and fighting finally woke Chen Hao up. What entered his eyes was the extremely chaotic scene in front of the core palace. Someone actually comprehended it? Little Shui, what are you doing? When Chen Hao woke up, he instantly frowned when he saw the handsome and valiant Chen Shui. It's a mess here. I was worried, so I came to take a look, Chen Shui said. She naturally could not say that she was worried Chen Hao would be bewitched by the demon. What's there to worry about? Hurry up and change back. I want to slap you when I see you like this. Chen Hao glared at Chen Shui. Although he knew that this was Chen Shui's unique ability, he was still not used to it. What do you plan to do? Chen Shui frowned and glared at Chen Hao. Chen Lin, Moling Takshu, and a legion commander called Bai Yen are all very strong. There's an even stronger Hu Mainyang. Who is Hu Mainyang? Chen Hao frowned slightly. He still had the advantage in terms of perception under the 9 seals. When he entered the city, he heard that Chen Lin and Moling Takshu might be coming here. Therefore, he was not surprised. Chen Shui's emphasis on Hu Mainyang made him more concerned. She's a legendary existence in the Divine Temple, the holder of the highest score in the vast universe galaxy's second world. She was the one who comprehended the third hex and opened the core palace. Long Ting said. Chen Shui wanted to say something, but she held back and did not say anything. After all, if she reminded Chen Hao not to be bewitched, she would be too petty. Moreover, from Hu Mainyang's seemingly courteous behavior just now, she did not put Moling Takshu and Bai Yen in her eyes at all. It seemed unlikely that she would have any interaction with Chen Hao. What do you plan to do? What else can we do? Regardless of who it was, since the core palace had been opened and the situation had become chaotic, it was only natural that they would have to fight for it. This time, it might even be a saint artifact from the primordial era. However, I want to go in. I want to enter too. Will it be dangerous for you to go in? Chen Hao said. Even when you weren't around, we were still training. Besides, it's chaotic now. With so many people going in, no one will dare to act rashly. It's fine if we don't go with you, said Chen Shui. But call Huan Huan, Lei Lei, and the others to go in and cultivate. I'll take care of the rest. Big brother Hao, you have to be careful of that Hu Mainyang. Don't fall into her trap. Long Ting said without even thinking. Follow her orders. That's right, you didn't see it just now. I had only heard about it in the Divine Temple and didn't believe it at all. But after seeing it just now, I have no choice but to believe it. Rumor has it that Hu Mainyang was born with a seductive bone. Moreover, she has the legendary innate Tao embryo. Her strength is unfathomable. She is the current generation's holy maiden of the Misty Rain Tower. Have you heard of the Misty Rain Tower? When Chen Shui heard Long Ting say this, she secretly rejoiced. The silly Long Ting was truly too cute. It was undoubtedly the most appropriate thing for her to say. Chen Hao definitely wouldn't think too much about it because in the hearts of everyone, Long Ting was an existence that didn't have any taboos. They didn't dare to do what they were embarrassed to do, and they didn't dare to say what they were embarrassed to say. Cough cough. I've heard of this. Don't worry, besides all of you, no one in this world can bewitch me. When he heard Long Ting say this, Chen Hao spoke confidently. After he finished speaking, he looked at Chen Shui, who seemed to have heaved a sigh of relief, and said, Little Shui, I was wondering why you hesitated to speak earlier. Look at little sister Ting, she can just say whatever she wants to say. Why are you being so courteous with me? I didn't. Chen Shui, who was rejoicing, didn't expect that she would give herself away and be exposed by Chen Hao's words. A wisp of red appeared on her valiant and formidable face. Chen Hao's entire body shuddered when he saw this. I'll go in first. Little Shui, from today onwards, you must never appear before me with this face. Otherwise, I'll have a psychological barrier. Hiss, hiss, hiss. At the instant Chen Hao charged into the palace, a pressure that seemed material covered the sky and covered the earth pressed down on his body. The scene in front of him changed in an instant. Almost 1,000 people appeared before him. Some had a relaxed expression, and some were drenched in sweat and desperately resisting the pressure as they slowly advanced. This won't do. The pressure of the Tao law in the core palace is actually so terrifying. Brother Lon, I have to stop and comprehend. I'm unable to advance. Yes, don't force yourself. In any case, we don't have the qualifications to fight for anything. It's fine as long as we can cultivate here. This is a rare opportunity. Yes, Brother Lon, don't worry about me. If you can advance, then continue forward. Under the enormous pressure, Chen Hao seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll as he caught up with the crowd in front of him. The two cultivators who were talking widened their eyes in shock, and then they hurriedly turned their heads to avoid Chen Hao. The person who had a calm expression earlier clenched his fists nervously, and even his breathing became hurried. We meet again? We're really fated. What do you want? Lan Feng asked nervously. Ever since he had entered the 9 restrictions of celestial sealing, he had been ravaged by Chen Hao for the first time, robbed of all his rootless fruits, and beaten up until he was half crippled. Lan Feng was extremely dissatisfied, and he had madly cultivated in an attempt to get back at Chen Hao. Moreover, he was quite lucky. In less than half a month, he had entered a cave abode that was better than the spiritual spring lake for cultivation. What made him feel even more fortunate was that he had coincidentally bumped into Chen Hao and the others in the first Forbidden City. Unfortunately, his joy had once again turned into a cruel reality. He was defeated by Chen Hao alone. Not only did Chen Hao rob him of his Dharma treasures and spiritual herbs, but he also slapped him until he was swollen like a pig's head. At that time, although he was dissatisfied, he knew he had no chance of getting back at Chen Hao in the 9 restrictions of celestial sealing. Moreover, after being defeated twice in a row, he had lost his prestige, and his team had been utterly defeated. More tragically, in the second Forbidden City, he, who had always been cautious, had miserably bumped into Chen Hao again and was robbed of everything. He did not expect to bump into Chen Hao again here. Was there anything more tragic than this? Don't be nervous. This sword is not bad. It's actually a supreme-grade spiritual treasure? Lan Feng's expression was extremely unsightly, and his voice trembled as he spoke. The surrounding cultivators also turned to look at Lan Feng. Do you think you can keep it? This is an ancient supreme-grade spiritual treasure. I'm doing this for your own good. I'll keep it safe for you. Chen Hao had a smile on his face as he stretched out his hand in an ostentatious manner. It was as though he was very concerned about Lan Feng. However, in Lan Feng's eyes, it was the smile of a devil. An ancient supreme-grade spiritual treasure? Isn't that something that can only be found in the second level of the palace? Not necessarily. People with great providence can also obtain heaven-defying Dharma treasures and inheritances. This disciple from the divine temple is not simple. I can't tell it's a supreme-grade spiritual treasure. That guy is obviously trying to rob us. He must have said that on purpose, right? Who is he? I think I saw him meditating in front of the 16 great palaces with a female disciple from the divine temple. Even the disciples from the divine temple are afraid of him. It's Chen Hao, the most powerful person in the East Flow division. Although the surrounding people were under pressure, they still began to discuss among themselves. Many of them even recognized Chen Hao. This is the last time. Let's call it quits. I apologize to you. Lan Feng's face turned green and white as he spoke in an extremely stifled manner. Hand over the treasured sword. Chen Hao smiled slightly and beckoned with his finger. Agree first. Sigh, underling Lan, I'm not trying to nag you, but I'm doing this for your own good. Look, how many people are eyeing your treasured sword? It's a supreme-grade spiritual treasure, and an ancient grade one at that. Don't you know that a man's wealth is his own ruin? If you don't say it, who will know that it's a supreme-grade spiritual treasure? Lan Feng was so angry that he was about to vomit blood. But really? Chen Hao did not stand on ceremony. With a flash of his body, he reached out and snatched the treasured sword from Lan Feng. Lan Feng wanted to resist, but he forcibly held himself back. Of course, under the immense pressure of the Tao laws in the palace, he could not resist. At the same time, Chen Hao's lightning-fast movements made him even more aware that this demon was too terrifying. If you have any more treasures, remember to give them to me. I'll take care of them for you. No one will dare to touch them. Chen Hao held the treasured sword with both hands. He unsheathed the sword a little, and it emitted a cold and sharp aura. He closed the sword with satisfaction and said with a smile. After he finished speaking, he walked forward as if nothing had happened. The surrounding people were a little dumbfounded and stunned. At this moment, those who did not walk forward did not want to, but they could not. Even if they could, it would be difficult for them to walk forward. What about Chen Hao? Lan Feng angrily glared at Chen Hao. He looked as if he was about to vomit blood, but in his heart, he rejoiced that he had encountered Chen Hao in the core palace in public. Otherwise, the treasured sword would not have been the only thing stolen. However, after a while, when everyone was no longer looking at Lan Feng, he suddenly let out a miserable scream like a pig being slaughtered. He groped around all over his body as if he had lost the most precious thing he had. Could this kid be the son of destiny? This thing must be a treasure. As Chen Hao walked, he sensed the almond-sized silver ball in his hand. Waves of Tao laws flowed into Chen Hao's body like a clear spring. Although he was embarrassed to look at it in public, Chen Hao was certain that this was a treasure. In his heart, he was full of admiration for Lan Feng's luck. The things he had robbed the last 2 times were not inferior to what he had robbed in the 2 core palaces. This time, just the treasured sword alone was very awesome. The silver ball that he had casually stolen seemed even better. It's a pity that there are too many people. I don't want to search them. Under the circumstances of the 9 restrictions of Immortal Sealing, although they had broken through 2 levels and gained some magic power and divine consciousness, none of the cultivators had been able to open their storage rings, let alone the space in their minds. Otherwise, Chen Hao would not have been able to steal so easily. Chapter 705. This Chen Hao is so relaxed. Could he have completely comprehended the 3rd hex? It can't be that coincidental, right? Before we came in, he was still cultivating outside. If he had comprehended it, why wouldn't he open it first? He definitely hasn't comprehended it. He's so relaxed because his physical body is freakish. You all saw it in the battle for the core palace of the 2nd Forbidden Area. He basically used his physical strength to defeat Lu Fengnan's 100-man team. He stopped. Chen Hao, who was strolling forward leisurely, attracted the attention of all the cultivators in the hall. Even Moling Takshu, Bai Yen, Chen Lin, and the others, who were sitting cross-legged at the front, were shocked. They felt slightly comforted when they saw that Chen Hao had suddenly stopped before overtaking them. Clearly, Chen Hao was relying on his freakishly powerful fleshly body to withstand the terrifying pressure. Although he seemed relaxed, he still hadn't fully comprehended the third hex. However, what? Before Moling Takshu, Bai Yen, and the others could let out a sigh of relief, Chen Hao, who had stopped, suddenly looked at the silver ball he had taken from Lan Feng with a little surprise. With the silver ball as the core, the surrounding space suddenly began to ripple violently. All the fragments of the heavenly Tao that could not be seen or touched actually began to strangely flash with a faint light at this moment, quickly converging towards the silver ball. The Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit Core? The Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit Core. It must be the Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit Core. Bai Yen and Moling Takshu blurted out in shock. What's the Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit Core? Someone in the crowd could not help but ask. This is the Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit Core? I've heard of it before. The Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit Core, as the name suggests, is the seed of the Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit. Just like the connate Tao embryo that can resonate with the great Tao, the Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit Core can absorb the Tao nomological fragments between heaven and earth to grow. Cultivators can directly consume it and plant it in their dantian to obtain the Tao nomological fragments contained within. At the same time, the cultivator can also nourish the Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit. There are many benefits. A knowledgeable cultivator in the crowd said in shock. It can be consumed and planted in the dantian? Chen Hao, who was still in shock and confusion, suddenly turned to look at the cultivator who spoke and asked. Of course. When the cultivator heard Chen Hao's question, he said with certainty, I just don't know what the level of the Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit is. However, the lowest level is Dao Yuo Jinxian's level. Moling Takshu and Bai Yan's faces turned green. That's my... Chen Hao, give it back to me. Lan Feng, who was struggling to move forward under the immense pressure, lost control of his emotions and roared at the top of his lungs. Lan Feng? What's going on? Tell me the truth. I, Bai Yen, will uphold justice for you. Chen Hao, right? You'd better not act rashly before things are cleared up. Otherwise, I don't mind cutting your stomach open. Bai Yen, aren't you meddling too much? Blue Peak belongs to my Moling Snowwalk Corps. It's not up to you to control it. Lan Feng, tell me what happened. I, Moling Takshu, will uphold justice for you. No one dares to bully the commander under me. Moling Takshu coldly snorted and said. Her gaze was even colder as she looked at Chen Hao. As soon as the two of them finished speaking, a fluctuation suddenly came from the restriction covered with rune Dao marks at the front. A figure leisurely walked out. Even Chen Hao could not help but look over. Amidst the milky white light emitted by the runes, it was as if an immortal had descended. Slender jade legs, a slender waist, a pair of proud peaks, snow-white skin, a peerlessly beautiful face, bright eyes and white teeth. Accompanied by her fluttering beautiful hair, she emanated a breathtaking beauty that was filled with a myriad of enchanting and amorous feelings. She was obviously charming to the bone, yet extremely pure and holy. Every single frown, smile, and action of hers was in harmony with the Tao. Even though Chen Hao had been mentally prepared, he was still extremely shocked when he saw this woman. This is the innate Taoist embryo? It's really powerful, Chen Hao thought to himself. His keen perception could clearly sense the strength of this woman. Especially when she smiled and looked directly at him, Chen Hao could not help but narrow his eyes. It was not a seduction technique, but it was even better. Although Chen Hao clearly felt that his mind did not show the slightest sign of being bewitched, he still could not resist the woman's flirtatious aura. She was like a monarch descending to the world. The moment she appeared, she seized the heavens and earth and became the only light in the world. the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core? Hu Meinyang's unexpected return interrupted the hostility caused by the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core. She stared at the silver ball blooming with light in Chen Hao's hand and gently opened her delicate lips. Her charming voice was like the sound of nature. It really is. Can you let Meinyang take a look? Hearing Hu Meinyang's words, everyone looked at Chen Hao. Moling Takshu and Bai Yen frowned slightly. Hu Meinyang's appearance was not something they were happy to see. Both of them were top geniuses and were subdued by Hu Meinyang's peerless demeanor and background, but in the face of this supreme treasure that could definitely cause a sensation in the vast universe galaxy, they could not simply give it away. Of course, the premise was that they knew that it was extremely difficult to obtain Hu Meinyang's favor. It could be said that there was no hope at all. Otherwise, any price would be worth it. It's mine. It's mine. Chen Hao, give it back to me. The brief silence was broken by the crazy Lan Feng who had slammed himself to death. Blood was coming out of his mouth, but he moved forward quickly, almost rolling and crawling. When this guy had obtained the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core, he had concluded that it was an incomparably miraculous treasure. This was because every time he cultivated, he could feel the fragments of the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core surging into his body. Now, he had comprehended the limit of the third hex and was just a little bit away from completely comprehending and breaking through. With his aptitude, such speed was absolutely inconceivable. After all, apart from Hu Meinyang who had a connate Tao manifestation, no one present had completely comprehended the third hex. It was because of this that he had let out a shrill and miserable scream after Chen Hao had taken away the fruit core. However, when he thought of how terrifying Chen Hao was, he could only let it go. However, just now, when the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core had been activated in an environment where Tao manifestation immortal fruit core was densely packed with Tao manifestation immortal fruit core, he could no longer control himself and completely disregarded the consequences. Didn't you see it? Chen Hao narrowed his eyes and said indifferently. Hu Meinyang's eyes suddenly lit up. She wanted to say something but stopped. Then she smiled. Unfortunately, Chen Hao turned his head and did not look at her again. This made Hu Meinyang feel as if she had hit the air. The other cultivators, including Moling Takshu and Bai Yen, were slightly surprised. Even though they knew that Chen Hao would definitely not let go of such a heaven-defying treasure easily, they did not expect him to reject it so cleanly without any hesitation. Chen Hao looked at Lan Feng and said, "Little brother Lan, are you stupid? You can't even keep a supreme-grade spirit treasure. Do you dare to eat this thing? I don't even dare to eat it. Didn't you hear someone say that he doesn't mind eating his guts out with me?" Chapter 706. I don't care. Give it to me. I've already apologized to you, and you've already taken everything. This fruit core belongs to me. You can't take it. Or else what? Humans die in pursuit of wealth, and birds die in pursuit of food. I remember you once told me that strength is the most important thing. The first time, we were fighting, and the second time, you wanted to take revenge. Just based on this, I can kill you. You're still not satisfied with using something to pay for your life? Chen Hao's eyes suddenly shone with a sharp light as he stared at Lan Feng. Even if he didn't know what it was, Chen Hao had no reason to return it to Lan Feng. If you respect me, I'll respect you tenfold. A drop of water should be repaid with a spring. Otherwise, of course, I'll repay it tenfold. You cut off one of my arms and I cut off the other. How can I make up for my loss? What a joke. Chen Hao was already merciful to Lan Feng. The first time he fought with this guy for the rootless spirit fruit, he was right. Strength was everything. The second time they met in the Forbidden City, this guy still wanted revenge. Based on this, Chen Hao could kill him without breaking the rules. All he did was take some treasures from him. Was that not merciful enough? Later he was merciful. This time, this guy really thought he was a good citizen. You, what about you? Get lost. If you keep blabbering, I'll chop you up. I'll let you know how many eyes Prince Chen has. Chen Hao said coldly. How can this be? Chen Shui, Long Ting, and the others had just arrived. They saw the tense scene as soon as they entered. Originally, they were not worried about Chen Hao. After all, his body that could evolve on its own was definitely strong. However, after seeing Moling Takshu, Bai Yan, and the unfathomable Hu Meinyang, they were not so sure anymore. After all, although Chen Hao's body could evolve on its own, it could only evolve to the strongest state of each restriction. When the binding of the 9 restrictions of Immortal's ceiling reached a critical point, it would stop. Don't expose yourselves. Don't come near. Move aside. I'll go over first. Long Ting said sternly. No, you don't go over too. Let's observe the situation first. If there's really no other way, then we'll just go all out. Chen Shui pulled Long Ting and said, Xiao Shui, I'm fine. I know you're strong, but you won't be able to withstand their numbers. Let's see what Hao does first, then we'll make a decision. Let's get closer and prepare for a surprise attack. Chen Shui said with a dignified expression and then looked at Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Sheng. Sister Shui, our lives belong to Big Brother Chen Hao. Fan Dongxing interrupted Chen Shui in a low but firm voice. Although flowing eastward did not speak, there was no fear in his eyes. Putting aside the fact that Chen Hao had saved their lives, even if he hadn't, they were well aware of how Chen Hao had treated them in the past 2 years. There was no reason to retreat at this time. Moreover, the more he interacted with them, the more he realized that Chen Hao and the others were not simple. Not to mention anything else, just Chen Shui's name was officially Chen Xiaobai, which was very shocking. Also, Venerable Han Mei, Venerable Yun Wei, and the sisters were not from the same army, but they were able to gather together in the sect ruins, which was even more incredible. Moreover, they also knew that the 3 immortals who had opened many of the forbidden areas of the 9 restrictions of Immortal's ceiling were also Chen Hao's Dao companions. However, they had already changed their appearances and were enduring a huge pressure to quietly cover the crowd. Get lost, I told you to get lost, didn't you hear me? Get out. Chen Hao pointed at Lan Feng's nose and then pointed at the exit and said angrily. The others did not understand, but Chen Hao's gaze towards the exit and his words made Chen Shui and the others understand. But at this moment, they did not obey Chen Hao. How arrogant. Do you know how precious this Dao manifestation immortal fruit core is? Brother Lan Feng just had a conflict with you over the treasure, and you want to kill him? If you know what's good for you, hand over the Dao manifestation immortal fruit. Get out of here. Otherwise, I don't mind upholding justice for Brother Lan Feng and letting you bleed. Give it to me. Bai Yan took a step forward and walked in front of Lan Feng, releasing an extremely powerful aura as he stared coldly at Chen Hao. Bai Yan, I've said before that Lan Feng is a member of my army, and so is Chen Hao. This matter should naturally be handled by me. Chen Hao, give it to me. Moling Takshu's aura instantly soared, and she also took a step forward and stood in front of Chen Hao, ordering him around in a condescending manner. This was already a flea on a monk's head. Such a far-fetched and overbearing reason was nothing more than wanting to obtain the Dao manifestation immortal fruit core. When everyone saw this scene, they could only sympathize with Lan Feng and Chen Hao. No matter what, the 2 of them would not be able to keep this treasure. However, everyone present had already seen Chen Hao's freakish strength under the enormous pressure just now, and they had more or less heard about the terrifying combat strength that Chen Hao had displayed on the first 2 levels. Therefore, no one could be sure what Chen Hao would do. Brother Moling, Brother Bai, Meinyang has a connate Taoist embryo, and this Dao manifestation immortal fruit core is very important to Meinyang. Of course, Meinyang will not get it for free. No matter who obtains it, Meinyang will try to give you satisfactory conditions in exchange. How about it? Of course, if you don't agree, then Meinyang can also interfere. This thing is very important to Meinyang. Meinyang's voice was still as melodious as the sounds of nature, but the content of her words had completely changed, revealing a fox's tale. His words were better than any song. She took care of Moling Takshu and Bai Yan's pride, and also showed her determination and strength to obtain the Dao manifestation immortal fruit core. Upon hearing this, Chen Hao was furious. Fuck, a woman's heart was the most vicious. As expected, she was concerned about Moling Takshu and Bai Yan's background and looked down on Chen Hao. It was as if the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core was already something that belonged to Moling Takshu or Bai Yan. In front of such a heaven-defying treasure, Hu Meinyang no longer concealed her determination to obtain it. She, who had completely comprehended the third hex, had already entered the interior of the palace and begun to break through and comprehend it. The reason she had come out was because she had heard the commotion outside. If she could obtain the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core, even if it was the lowest grade one, it would complement her, and her cultivation and comprehension speed would be astonishingly increased. Although she felt that Chen Hao was not simple, she did not think that Chen Hao could contend with Moling Takshu and Bai Yan. She did not care about people like Chen Hao who did not have a background. Chen Hao wanted to fly into a rage immediately, but when he sensed the auras of the three people as well as Chen Hao and the others who had surrounded him, he could only endure it for now. He looked at Moling Takshu and then at Bai Yan, as if hesitating about who to give it to. However, Bai Yan and Moling Takshu were not looking at him at this moment. Instead, they frowned and looked at Hu Meinyang, who had spoken in a domineering manner. After a slight hesitation, Moling Takshu said first, "Since Miss Hu has said so, I will not refuse you. Miss Hu, since you like it, I'll get it for you. As for compensation, we can discuss it." Bai Yan smiled slightly, looking as if he had Moling Takshu under control. "Then how will you compensate me? How about this, let's not talk nonsense. I can't give this to you for free. If you insist on snatching it, I'll eat it and bite it to pieces." "Bite it to pieces? Why don't you try biting it? What do you think the immortal fruit core is?" "Idiot," Bai Yan said disdainfully. Chapter 707. Chen Hao's face darkened as he cursed in his heart. If it was just Bai Yan, he would have slapped him long ago. Similarly, if Chen Shui and the others were not here, Chen Hao would definitely fly into a rage. However, he could only temporarily suppress his anger and said, "Then who should I give it to? As long as I hand over the immortal fruit core, can you guarantee my safety?" "Give it to me. I, Moling Takshu, guarantee your safety. Whoever dares to touch you will be touching me. What's the point? Moling Takshu, I think it's better for us to fight it out and decide who it belongs to." Bai Yan said disdainfully. "Do you think I'm afraid of you? Do you really think you can defeat me just because you're ranked 9th? Come on." Boom. Moling Takshu said sternly. Under the huge pressure, a peerlessly fierce aura bloomed around him. Bai Yan snorted coldly as his aura suddenly soared. At this moment, Chen Lin suddenly frowned and shouted, "Brother Moling, you mustn't." "Chen Lin, what are you doing?" Moling Takshu rebuked angrily. "Brother Moling, Brother Bai Yan, don't underestimate this boy Chen Hao. He's very strong, and he has no intention of handing over the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core. Look at him, where's the slightest bit of fear? He's only doing this because he wants to reap the benefits of both of you fighting each other. Get out of the way. Do you think we're idiots who can't tell?" Bai Yan said disdainfully, "He's just an ant. Our fight is to snatch. Give it to me." What surprised Chen Hao was that Bai Yan and Moling Takshu were not idiots. Perhaps it was because of Chen Lin's reminder that Bai Yan charged toward him at lightning speed. Clearly, he wanted to snatch the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core first. However, Chen Hao did not panic at all. He did not even move. How arrogant! Clang! The sword on Moling Takshu's back suddenly shot out. A cold sword light accompanied by a terrifying immortal sword intent swept through the world in an instant. One sword shot towards Bai Yan, while the other hand contained a mysterious and ancient aura as it grabbed towards Chen Hao. Although the surrounding cultivators knew that the battle between Moling Takshu and Bai Yan would be exceptionally terrifying, they did not expect that the aura released by the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing would be so frightening right from the start. Frightened, they retreated one after another. Even an expert like Chen Lin felt his hair stand on end and took a few steps back. Bai Yan clearly knew that Moling Takshu would not let him do as he wished. The hand that reached for Chen Hao was just a feint. The moment Moling Takshu's sword arrived, A resplendent saber light suddenly soared into the sky. All of his power was concentrated on the heavy saber. Ding ding ding. Rumble. Moling Takshu originally wanted to kill two birds with one stone, but he did not expect Bai Yen to be so sinister. The violent energy made him retreat a few steps. He waved his sword with all his strength to block, but he was still shaken to the point that his chi and blood were in turmoil. He was at a disadvantage. However, before Moling Takshu could regain his composure, a scream exploded from Bai Yan's roar. Moling Takshu, who saw this scene at close range, felt his hair stand on end. All the onlookers gasped and widened their eyes. They could not believe what they were seeing. Even Hu Mainyang, who was indifferent and waiting to reap the fruits of others' labor, narrowed her eyes. No one expected, only Chen Lin, who had come into contact with Chen Hao, had a premonition. However, he did not expect Chen Hao to be so daring. The cold silver sword light was like a shooting star that streaked across the sky. It was extremely fast, ruthless, and unbelievably sharp. It pierced through Bai Yan's shoulder in an extremely tricky manner. Chen Hao, who wanted to kill Bai Yan with one strike, had to admit that Bai Yan, who was ranked 9th in the Divine Temple, had a reaction speed that exceeded his expectations. He actually managed to twist his body in the nick of time to avoid the fatal blow. At the same time, he frantically withdrew his saber, changed direction, changed hands, and chopped with all his might. It was done in one go without any hesitation. This was the only way to save his life. Chen Hao's sword had pierced through Bai Yan's shoulder. If he wanted to slash Bai Yan horizontally, he would definitely not be able to avoid Bai Yan's saber, which was enough to split Chen Hao in half. He was trading his life for his life. Everyone was shocked by this scene. They were shocked by Chen Hao's silent sneak attack and terrifying strength. They were even more shocked by Chen Hao's daring. That was definitely a sneak attack that would kill in one strike. Not to mention whether Chen Hao had the strength to kill Bai Yan. Even if he did, he should not have dared to kill Bai Yan. Bai Yan and Moling Takshu had openly bullied Chen Hao and said that he would not hand over the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core. It was not a bad idea to kill him. Although it was against morality, fighting for treasures was based on strength. Just like what Chen Hao had said to Lan Feng, treasures arouse the envy of others. Without sufficient cultivation, one could only hand over the treasure if they encountered a cultivator who did not care about face and morality. Otherwise, they would be killed. Strength was everything. To put it bluntly, if Chen Hao was killed because of the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core, Bai Yan and Moling Takshu would at most be looked down upon by righteous people. It was not a big deal. How many righteous people were there in this world? It was not 100%, but 90% of people, as long as they had the strength, would make a move when they saw a heaven-defying treasure like the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core. It was also because of this that even Hu Mainyang had revealed her foxtail. However, if it was flipped around, it was a completely different concept. There was no other reason than the background of Bai Yan, Moling Takshu, and Hu Mainyang. Who would dare to kill them? The reason why Hu Mainyang did not make a move and even agreed to compensate the two of them in exchange for the Tao manifestation immortal fruit core was that she did not want to completely offend Moling Takshu and Bai Yan. Otherwise, given her strength, it would not be a problem to directly seize it. However, Chen Hao, a nobody with no background, dared to kill Bai Yan. If Bai Yan died, once he stepped out of the primitive mystic realm, there would be no place for Chen Hao in this world. In fact, everyone related to Chen Hao would be consigned to eternal damnation. Who would have thought that Chen Hao would be so crazy? So daring? Just as everyone was in a daze, the battle of life and death had already come to an end. Chen Hao's cold voice sounded, as if he had transformed into a demon. The scene was silent as everyone stared blankly at the unbelievable scene before them. Chen Hao grabbed Chen Hao's treasured saber with his bare hands. The sharp blade, which contained Bai Yan's near-death energy, was actually unable to split open Chen Hao's palm. Although it penetrated deep into his flesh and bones, Chen Hao grabbed it firmly. Chen Hao's hand was bleeding profusely. "You can die now. Remember not to be arrogant in front of me in your next life." Pooh. At this moment, Chen Hao's cold voice sounded as he slashed horizontally with his sword. The arrogant Bai Yan's eyes were filled with fear and unwillingness. He stared as if he did not believe that this was his fate. He did not believe that someone would dare to kill him. But everything was set in stone. He could clearly feel the cold, treasured sword that had pierced through his right hand, slashing across his heart and chest. "Dare to kill me, my Bai family." Chen Hao's bloody hand that was holding Bai Yan's treasured saber suddenly snatched it away and threw it away. Then he slapped Bai Yan's head. The upper half of Bai Yan's body instantly fell to the ground. Bai Yan wanted to continue speaking, but the gurgling blood blocked his voice. However, since his body had been cut in half, it was impossible for him to die so quickly. His eyes, which were gushing with blood, stared at Chen Hao with incomparable hatred. "Bai family? I dare to kill the king of hell." At this moment, Chen Hao's handsome face was filled with a cold and fierce aura, and the words he spoke were arrogant to the point of being insufferably arrogant. However, his words were not as frightening as his actions. Bang! Chen Hao's feet surged with waves of runes as he stomped on Bai Yan's head. Like a watermelon, brain matter and blood splattered everywhere. Obviously, this was not only stomping on the head, but also the destruction of the body and soul. When Chen Hao said those words and did this action, his eyes stared straight at Moling Takshu, who was holding her sword in a daze. He looked as if he would kill any god or devil that blocked his way. Dang dang dang. Moling Takshu was actually affected by Chen Hao's aura and could not help but take a few steps back. At this moment, everyone was as silent as cicadas in winter. Chen Shui, Long Ting, the sisters, Senior Immortal Yun Wei, Fan Donglu, and Fan Dongxing were all scared silly. Even Senior Immortal Han Mei, who had an abnormality, looked straight at Chen Hao with a dazed expression. "You dare to kill Bai Yan?" Moling Takshu's face was gloomy, but her voice was trembling as she stared at Chen Hao. "So what if I killed him? He's just an ant. I can kill him with one hand." Chen Hao disdainfully said what Bai Yan had just said. It was indeed one hand, but it was one that was almost crippled. However, no one denied Chen Hao's words at this moment. Using his flesh and blood to block Bai Yan's dying strike was really too shocking. However, Chen Hao knew that what he did was far from enough. While speaking, Chen Hao casually picked up Bai Yan's saber while everyone was still in a daze. This was an ancient supreme-grade spirit treasure saber. "I hate shameless people the most. Since you want me to kill, then..." When Chen Hao said, "then," the aura around his body suddenly erupted. Moling Takshu panicked and suddenly raised her sword, ready to meet him. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At this moment, Chen Hao twisted his body, twisted his waist, and waved his arm. His whole body was like a divine bow that was pulled into a full moon. He threw out the saber in his hand as fast as lightning. The cold saber turned into an invincible wind-fire wheel and flew out at a terrifying speed. The pressure of the true origin contained in it was not strong in the eyes of Moling Takshu and Hu Meinyang. However, the sound of the air braking caused by the high-speed rotation made Moling Takshu, who bore the brunt of it, to gather 100% of her strength. However, the saber that seemed to fly towards Moling Takshu drew a beautiful arc and turned towards the pale-faced Chen Lin, who had just spoken to warn Moling Takshu and Bai Yan. "Ah!" Chen Lin, who was not prepared, exclaimed. He felt a warmth in his pants. He wanted to run, but his body did not listen to him. He was so scared that he peed. "Go to hell!" Chen Hao's words after, "then," were heard at the same time as the sound of the saber's spinning blade hitting Chen Lin's head. Chapter 708. Whoosh! Whoosh! Chen Lin's head was cut in half vertically with the center of his eyebrows as the axis. Brain matter, blood, minced meat, and bone fragments flew everywhere. After the high-speed rotating saber cut open Chen Lin's head, it actually circled around and flew back to Chen Hao's hand in a beautiful trajectory. It was bloody, cruel, and horrifying. How did he do it? How is it possible to control it like that? Everyone present was an Earth celestial stage expert. If it were any other time, it would be no problem for them to do this. But it was different now. Under the 9 restrictions of celestial sealing, among everyone present, only Hu Mainyang had fully comprehended the 3rd restriction. Although her magic power and divine thought had recovered by nearly 30%, the heavenly law was incomplete. She couldn't even fly or open a storage ring, let alone control it perfectly. However, Chen Hao was actually able to use the treasured saber to such an exquisite level. Hu Mainyang's pupils constricted. She, who had an innate Taoist embryo, was close to the great Tao and was extremely sensitive to Taoist laws. However, at this moment, even she was shocked by Chen Hao's seemingly casual move that could kill people as easily as cutting vegetables. That was definitely not a Taoist rune, but a perfect combination of a wisp of divine thought and the power of the saber's rotation. Not to mention anything else, just calculating the force and direction of the rotation of the saber was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. At least, Hu Mainyang was not confident at all. If you think you can kill me, you can do it. I've never held grudges. If there's a grudge, I'll take revenge on the spot. This primitive mystic realm has been around for at least hundreds or even thousands of years. Idiots who rely on their fathers. Oh, they rely on their families and sections. Don't come in front of me. If you provoke me, I'll kill you. Chen Hao held the sword in one hand and the saber in the other. His black eyes were as bright as stars, emitting a soul-stirring murderous aura as he looked down on the crowd. Everyone who met his gaze shuddered and avoided him. Chen Hao walked toward Moling Taksha step by step. His body was covered in blood, and the blade of the ancient supreme-grade spiritual treasure shone with a cold light. With every step he took, the murderous aura around him increased. What do you want? Moling Taksha had experienced great storms and countless cruel battles. She had been defeated and killed many geniuses. However, at this moment, she was frightened by Chen Hao's madness and ruthlessness. She could not help but retreat in fear. She was afraid even before the battle started. This wasn't because he was cowardly, but because Chen Hao's madness that completely disregarded everything and his formidable strength had completely intimidated him. In the past, after he became famous, who would dare to kill him? What he had to face was, at best, a fair challenge between genius disciples, or an explicit duel to the death. Whether he was arrogant and despotic, or whether he went too far, behind him was one of the top 10 sects of vast universe galaxy. The Eternal Life sect was his most solid backing. No one dared to kill him so easily. Just like the unfathomable Hu Mainyang, she had the strength to suppress and vie with him, but she still had to be wary of his background and avoid offending him. But Chen Hao was a complete lunatic. Bai Yan's background was not any worse than his, but Chen Hao had mercilessly killed him with a single sword strike. Although it was an unexpected sneak attack, the abnormal body and cold-bloodedness that Chen Hao displayed made Moling Taksha understand that under the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, he was not Chen Hao's match. And Chen Hao's terrifying ability to kill someone with a toss of his blade made him even more certain. Leave behind everything you have and get out. Otherwise, I don't mind trampling an ant to death. Chen Hao said coldly. You, don't fucking talk nonsense. Chen Hao took another step forward. Moling Takshu was ashamed and angry at the same time. He looked at the surrounding cultivators in his team and roared, all of you, attack. Kill him. Who dares? Chen Hao suddenly shouted these 2 words like a thunderclap. He held his treasured blade horizontally in front of him and said, although I haven't had much contact with scum like you, I know your character. Who would work for you and be cannon fodder? Of course, all of you can come at me together. What do I have to fear? If one comes, I'll kill one. If a pair comes, I'll kill a pair. Wherever Chen Hao pointed his treasured blade, the cultivators, who did not dare to move, retreated one after another under Chen Hao's oppressive aura. The people present were not idiots. Chen Hao was a killing god who killed without blinking. He even dared to kill Bai Yan. What else did he not dare to do? This was no longer as simple as fighting for treasures. It was a fight to the death. Who could stop him? Anyone who went up would be cannon fodder. They had stepped into the primitive mystic realm for cultivation, ancient dharma treasures, spirit herbs, and inheritances. They were not seeking death. Chen Hao, Brother Chen, right? You have already killed 2 people, especially Bai Yan, who is the #1 genius of the Bai family. Can you give Mainyang some face and let this matter rest? This. Hu Mainyang's figure flashed as the surrounding heavenly Tao laws and heaven and earth energy shook. She appeared between Chen Hao and Moling Takshu like a ghost. She smiled sweetly and her eyes were bright as she stared at Chen Hao, who was filled with killing intent. Her voice was still that seductive yet ethereal voice. Chen Hao frowned slightly. This woman looked calm and composed. However, her aura that was compatible with the Tao and the ghostly speed she had just displayed made Chen Hao cautious. Chen Hao could not tell how strong she was at all. This was also the thing that Chen Hao was most worried about. However, if Chen Hao had not maintained his composure, he would have slapped her long ago. Her words sounded better than singing. She was a slut. Miss Hu, let's kill this demon together. The Tao manifestation immortal fruit core is yours. I, Moling Takshu, represent the Eternal Life sect and will advance and retreat together with the Misty Rain Tower. Moling Takshu, who was aggrieved, frightened, and even more furious, immediately spoke with resentment when he saw Hu Mainyang stand up for him. He knew very well that if he did not kill Chen Hao today, even if he could escape, it would be the greatest humiliation of his life. Chen Hao was destined to die. He did not doubt this at all. No one could casually kill Chen Hao. Regardless of whether it was in accordance with the rules, the Bai family would definitely bury Chen Hao with him. However, that was something that would happen after they left the primitive mystic realm. Just as Chen Hao had said, the primitive mystic realm would last for at least hundreds or thousands of years. If he was targeted by such a crazy and ruthless person, wouldn't he have to hide like a mouse before he completely comprehended the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing? Once that really happened, he, Moling Takshu, would be completely crippled. His Tao heart would be crippled and his luck would stop. It would be difficult for him to climb up the ranks of the top experts of the human race. The only way was to kill Chen Hao. He had to kill Chen Hao at all costs. Therefore, he made such a heavy promise without even thinking about it. He, the #1 genius disciple of the Eternal Life sect, would definitely become the sect master of the Eternal Life sect in the future as long as there were no accidents. Needless to say, Hu Mainyang, who had an innate Tao embryo, was even more so. As the saintess of the Misty Rain Tower, she was the only candidate for the position of Tower Master. Moreover, Hu Mainyang had already obtained the inheritance of the founder of the Misty Rain Tower and cultivated the #1 absolute art of the Misty Rain Tower, the Red Dust Heart Sutra. She would definitely become the most brilliant Tower Master in the history of the Misty Rain Tower. She would be on par with the founder of the Misty Rain Tower and might even be able to recreate the former glory of the Misty Rain Tower. Moling Takshu's promise was equivalent to the alliance of the 2 top forces in the vast universe galaxy in the future, with the Misty Rain Tower as the leader. When Hu Mainyang heard Moling Takshu's words, her pair of bright eyes instantly bloomed with 7-colored rays of light. Everyone was shocked to find that her gaze, which was like a 7-colored light pillar, was directly connected to Chen Hao's eyes. Huff! A cool breeze suddenly appeared in the strangely quiet space. Hu Mainyang's fine black hair fluttered in the wind. Her Taoist robe fluttered. Her entire being seemed to have transformed into the most brilliant star in the world. Her graceful and exquisite body and her devastatingly beautiful face made everyone unable to move their eyes away from her. The world suddenly lost its color and their minds suddenly went blank. There was only her, only her. At this moment, she was the master of this world, a goddess, a banished immortal. Not to mention Chen Hao, who bore the brunt of it. All the surrounding cultivators, regardless of gender, had their eyes fixed as if they had lost their souls. They were awed by Hu Mainyang's peerless demeanor. Those with weaker willpower even knelt down on the ground to worship her. This is not good. Long Ting, the sisters, and the others, who were hiding in the crowd, also lost their minds and forgot everything. They could only stare blankly at Hu Mainyang. Only Qin Shui struggled for a moment. The moment her eyes regained their clarity, she was about to rush out. However, at this moment, Han Mei Immortal, who had always been by her side, suddenly reached out and held her tightly. Don't worry, Dun. How I can still bear it. Han Mei Immortal lowered her voice and whispered in Chen Shui's ear. Mother, look carefully. Han Mei Immortal knew that Chen Shui didn't believe her words. After all, the current her, except for her higher realm, had been surpassed by Chen Shui in all aspects. When Chen Shui heard her mother's words, she looked at Chen Hao in surprise. What surprised her was that the seven-colored light that seemed to connect to Chen Hao's eyes actually froze in front of Chen Hao's eyelids. Chen Hao's dark and deep eyes were still clear. Although there was no fluctuation of color, it seemed to emit a kind of colorless, formless, and extremely pure will, blocking the seven-colored light from invading. Chen Hao's black hair fluttered in the wind, as did his clothes. His handsome face was cold and solemn, and his eyes were as firm as iron. Holding the treasured saber and sword horizontally, he still emitted a shocking murderous aura. However, at this moment, it was completely covered by Chen Hao's figure, which was as straight as a mountain and as straight as a sword, and the soaring essence Qi emitted. Brother Moling, what are you waiting for? After a full minute, Hu Meinyang finally couldn't help but remind him while she was shocked in her heart. She thought that she could take Chen Hao by surprise and use the Red Dust Heart Sutra to intimidate him. This was the first time she had used the Red Dust Heart Sutra since she had cultivated it. She believed that in the world, no one in the Earth's celestial stage could resist it. However, what she didn't expect was that Chen Hao, who didn't have any background and only had a little bit of talent, had an unbelievably strong state of mind, will, and cultivation. After a full minute, she could only stabilize his mind, but she couldn't break through it. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.